So hey guys, how are you all? Today we're going to see, what if Harry Potter was raised by the mother of magics and spells? If you are new here, subscribe, either I will take your pizza. Also, as you know, I do not own this story. If you want to see original creator, then go to space into Milky Way. LOL, joking, you can find it in description. Severus Snape stood in front of a cottage in Godric's Hollow, wand in hand, and determined to stop the Dark Lord to kill his former best friend and her innocent child. He was naive to believe that Voldemort would keep his promise. After he heard the prophecy, he had run to his master to warn him, still thinking he would make the right decision. But then he found out about Lily being pregnant and expecting a child at the end of July. He had begged the Dark Lord to think about it, that he didn't know the rest of the prophecy, but Voldemort wouldn't hear him out and cursed him instead. Severus had gone to Dumbledore, begged him to protect Lily, and warned him that the Dark Lord would try to kill her and the unborn. He even took an unbreakable vow to protect the child. The Potters went into hiding, and Severus had thought everything would be fine, but then he witnessed how Peter Pettigrew stood in front of Voldemort, revealing the location of the family and how the Dark Lord ordered the Lestrange family and Barty to the Longbottom family, while he himself would go to the Potters. Severus knew he had only two options: going to Dumbledore and risk that the man and his order would be too late, or sending a message to the Longbottoms and every aura he knew, and going after the Dark Lord and sacrificing himself. Severus knew he had no chance against Voldemort, but there was nothing for him to live for. He had no family, no friends. Even among the Death Eaters, he was just an outsider, the poor half-blood, whose only talent laid in potions. His former friend, however, deserved to live as well as the Longbottoms. And as much as he hated James, he had still a life debt to pay, because James saved his life from the werewolf Lupin. And he was the one Lily chose as her husband. Not that Severus ever saw in Lily more than a sister. Something was always missing, and when they grew older, it never changed. What changed were their view over the different aspects about magic. But the breaking point was the moment as he called her a mudblood. It wasn't an excuse that Potter and Black humiliated him in front of the whole school, or that she wouldn't believe him when he told her about his suspicion about Lupin being a werewolf, or that from day one Potter and Black would bully him, while Lupin and Pettigrew just watched. It wasn't an excuse that he got bitterer with each year he had to live with arrogant and violent purebloods who would use him as punching ball behind closed doors. When he got his, the thought that Severus had been able to finish his potion mastery in record time increased her hate against him. Lily wanted to be the best. Unbeknownst to everyone, it wasn't Severus calling her a mudblood what let her abandon him, but the knowledge that he was better than her. The incident was just the perfect opportunity to let him fall without being the evil one. Dating James let her think she would have an advantage due to his pure blood state, but again she had been mistaken. Nothing had gone after her plan. The only positive was the Longbottoms were a nice family. Hadrian remembered that they were also targeted by the Death Eaters and were rescued just in time. Alukard had told him that Severus Snape had sent them a warning, as well as to several Aurors, while he himself went to the Potters. Alice and Frank hadn't known at first who sent them the warning, because they hadn't recognized the voice or the Patronus, which they couldn't identify either. They found out later, after Alucard had taken care of cleaning Severus' name and proving his innocence, and that it was him who fought against the Dark Lord. Of course, many hadn't cared, because the man had been dead for 5 years already, but others like the Longbottoms and, unfortunately, some of the Death Eaters weren't happy. The former because their friends had withheld the fact and let the Ministry sent an innocent man to Azkaban, while the latter were outraged by the betrayal of this little half-blood. Thinking of Death Eaters, Hadrian's thoughts went back to the blonde Malfoy boy, who seemed to be an arrogant, spoiled brat. His father, Lucius Malfoy, is a known follower of the Dark Lord, which made them even less sympathetic. However, Hadrian vowed that he would not make the mistake of forming an opinion about anyone based solely on who their parents were. Time would tell who Draco Malfoy truly is, and this was the same for everyone else. In the shop for Magical Menagerie, Hadrian found a snow owl, which he named Hedwig. It wasn't his plan to get a pet, but Juna, his sister, wanted to go into the shop, and somehow it ended with Hadrian getting an owl. Juna also wanted a pet, but their father told her she was still too young to get one. Juna was dying and very ill. A little nudge from Lady Magic and Alukard had taken her in and begun to feed her with his blood, which Juna needed regularly to survive. Now she was a little hurricane on 2 feet, but still needed the blood. They found out that she had a blood illness called leukemia and assumed that this was the reason why her parents had abandoned her. Living vampires were nothing like vampires, who needed to drink the blood of humans or could only walk through the night. And like the goblins, they had a peace treaty with the wizarding world, which especially one side had no intention to break, very well knowing who would be the winner. His clan was the only one in Britain, and only 2 Wixen knew who Alukard was, who weren't a headmaster or a Dark Lord. Then the day came where Hadrian would part with his family. It was tradition that students would travel with the Hogwarts Express. Therefore, Alukard, Juna, and Elizabeth accompanied Hadrian to King's Cross. They had used the Muggle entrance and had seen another family who would loudly speak about Platform 9 3/4, to which they could only shake their heads. Muggles gave the family a wide berth, and they did as well, though it didn't last long, because they headed to the same entrance. To his luck, they ignored them, though he had the feeling they were waiting for someone, because the woman looked often over her shoulder and scanned the crowd. Only as she took a closer look at him, she seemed to recognize him, but he already vanished through the wall. Before she could say anything, and on the other side, they quickly disappeared in the mass of wizarding families. Not long after, he said his goodbyes, promising he would write at least twice the week and keeping them updated before he stepped into the Hogwarts Express. He sat alone in his compartment until someone opened it. Hadrian turned his head and recognized the boy as the youngest Weasley boy. "Am I? Sorry, can I sit here? The other compartments are full, and well, you seem to be alone." "Sure." The boy sat down in front of Hadrian and stretched out his hand. "My name is Ron Weasley. Hadrian Dragon Peveril." He accepted the hand and then noticed the other's stare. "What? Peveril?" "Yes." Hadrian rose an eyebrow, not looking away from the other boy, who reared back a little. Sorry. I just thought there were no Peverils left." You don't speak much, huh?" "Problem with that?" Again, Ron reared back a little. "No, not at all." There were a short pause before Ron asked another question. "Say, do you know Harry Potter? My parents said he would also start Hogwarts this year, but I hadn't seen him. I don't know. How does he look like?" "Not sure. I know he has a scar on his forehead, which looks like a bolt." "Wait, you have the same scar. I see. Well, the bad I'm not Harry Potter," smirked Hadrian, which sent a shiver down Ron's spine. "Well, are you sure you aren't him? I mean, I heard he was sent somewhere into the Muggle world, so he couldn't be found by the enemy." "Interesting. I heard he died shortly after he was sent away." "What?" Ron looked in shock at Hadrian, who had the feeling the boy had thought to find Harry Potter and become friends with him. Hadrian just laughed inwardly, though it was also bitter. The wizarding world had a strange idea of the boy who lived. Someone had stated he had survived the killing curse and defeated Voldemort. No one cared that it was Severus Snape who actually had managed to vanquish this insane wizard, even with all the proof handed over to them. And the Potters never cared to inform the world that Severus had been innocent, even after the Longbottoms demanded them to tell the truth, which only increased his hate for them. To Hadrian's delight, he didn't look like a Potter. After his adoption, he looked more like his father, Alukard, than his biological father. His hair was a deep black with blonde strands, kept in a middle cut, a few strands covering his forehead, and slightly messed up, so it wouldn't lay straight against his head. He doesn't look like anything as his biological parents anymore, and his skin was a little darker due to his dragon nature. He doesn't need any glasses, and his eye color may still be similar to this of Lily Potter, but due to the gold, no one would draw a connection. Not that Hadrian truly cared, because soon everyone would know either way. But at least for him, it was a good feeling to look into a mirror and not seeing any similarities to these two horrible persons. Before Ron could say anything else, the door to their compartment was opened again. This time it was a girl with a red mob of hair. "Hi, have you seen Trevor?" "Who?" "Trevor. He's Neville's toad. He's a gift from his uncle Algy, though Neville lost him somewhere in the train." "I haven't seen a toad, no," answered Hadrian. "I didn't either." The girl sat down next to Ron. "My name is Hermione Granger, by the way. I assume your first years as well?" "Yes. Ron Weasley and Hadrian Dragon Peveril." "Peveril? Are you a descendant from the Peverell brothers? Did you know that one of Hogwarts' founders were a descendant from the middle Peverell brother? Wait, what? Which one? Does it matter? Asked Hadrian. Depends, replied Ron. I see. Ron stared at Hadrian in confusion, while Hermione watched them both. I think it was Salazar Slytherin. Ron narrowed his eyes, and Hadrian felt the sudden tension in the air. Hermione seemed not to notice and continued. I heard that you know who was the heir of Slytherin, which would mean he would be also a cousin of yours. And Hadrian didn't show any sign of discomfort or as he would care. Nothing. I find it just interesting. I mean, you hadn't answered my question if you were a descendant from the Peverell brothers. In the Muggle world, there are many families with the same surname, but without any connection, so I thought it could be the same for you. I'm new to the wizarding world and want to learn everything about it. Aha! Hermione raised her eyebrow with a look as she expected a better answer. Could be possible. I have a tapestry with my ancestors on it. Sorry, aren't you a pure blood? Asked Ron. So far as I know, one of my biological parents is a pure blood while the other is a Muggleborn. They abandoned me and someone else adopted me. I'm sorry to hear it. I hope your new family is doing a better job. Oh, don't worry. They're great. Well, I still need to find a toad. See you later. Hermione stood up and was almost gone as she turned around to look at Ron. You have something on your nose right there. Hermione pointed at a spot at her nose and vanished. Okay, she's weird. Ron rubbed against his nose and scrunched his face when he saw she was right. Harry just shrugged and turned his attention back to the outside world. The rest of the trip was quiet. They almost reached the station in Hogsmeade when Ron decided to open his mouth again. Okay, listen. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have reacted the way I did. I mean, you cannot pick up who your ancestors are, right? And well, you were still a toddler like me when the Dark Lord vanished. So, I'm sorry. Okay, you really doesn't like to talk to you. What can I say? You apologized, and it's okay. But to be honest, I wouldn't have cared even if you hadn't apologized. There is nothing I have done wrong, and I'm proud of who I am. Should somebody have an issue with it, then they can let me be and search for other people they may like. Well, okay. Message received. In Hogsmeade, they left the train, and Hadrian saw, for the first time, a half-giant who was calling for all the first years. Again, he was watching his surroundings, but again, he couldn't find what he hoped would be here. Hey, are you searching for someone? Not really. You're no fun. As I said, you can look for someone else if you don't like my behavior. They followed the half-giant to a shore with dozens of boats, which they used as transport to the castle. The sight of Hogwarts was spectacular, but Hadrian had the strange feeling that the castle was sad, that the lights weren't as bright as they should be. He shook his head, thinking he might just imagine it. Inside of Hogwarts, they met Professor McGonagall, who led them to a staircase and ordered them to wait until she would return for them. If that isn't Ron Weasley, hadn't thought your parents would be able to send another child to Hogwarts. However, from the look, I can imagine that they couldn't afford to buy some new clothes for you. Next to Hadrian, Ron stiffened and sneered. Better is to have a stick in the ass and to know that the own father is a traitor to the wizarding world. Be careful what you say, or I might tell my father he should get your father out of the ministry. You damn snake. You're just a coward like your father. I think both of you should calm down, interrupted Hadrian. The other students just watched and whispered, but turned their attention to Hadrian when he spoke up. Well, seems we meet again. Hope you had a nice trip. Draco smiled at Hadrian, who didn't return it, so he stopped. What? The Weasleys are a family of... I don't care what you think they are. Ron smiled smugly, but stopped when Hadrian continued. And I don't care what the Weasleys are thinking about you. Yeah? And why are you interfering then? Because I don't want to hear two brats bicker who the better is of them at my first day at Hogwarts. You. Before Draco could answer, the doors to the Great Hall opened, and a witch, who introduced herself as Professor McGonagall, called for them to enter. The Great Hall was as much impressive as the castle from outside, but Hadrian had still the feeling something was wrong with the light. He let his gaze wander over the staff table, but didn't linger when he saw the two Potters. For a short second, Hadrian met the eyes of the headmaster, but didn't stop to acknowledge the man. He wasn't sure yet what he should think about the old wizard. Partly it was his fault what happened to Severus, because he didn't stop the bullying of the Marauders or the tormenting from the Slytherins. In general, he seemed blind to what is happening in Hogwarts or just didn't care. From what Hadrian knew, the headmaster seemed biased, because he favored the Gryffindors and saw in all Slytherins only a potential Death Eater, even if they came from different houses, not only Slytherin. He took in the other staff members, before he turned his attention back to Professor McGonagall, who stood next to a chair with a hat sitting on top. Welcome to Hogwarts, your home for the next 7 years where you will learn the different kind of magic and the history of the wizarding world. However, before you will join the others, you will be sorted into one of the 4 houses: Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, or Slytherin. I'll call for your names, and you'll come forward, where you'll sit down. Then I'll put these hat on your head, and it will sort you into the house, where you will stay until the end of your 7 years. As soon as the house is announced, you'll join your housemates on the respective table. When there are no questions, then let us begin. Professor McGonagall paused for a moment, letting her gaze wander of the little group of new students, before she opened a scroll and read the first name. Hannah Abbott, a girl, stepped forward, sitting down, and looked nervous up when the professor put the hat on her head. It didn't even take 2 seconds before the hat shouted Hufflepuff, and so the students were called forward one after another. Hadrian watched how Hermione was sorted into Gryffindor, as well as Neville, followed by Draco, who was sorted into Slytherin before the hat even touched his head. Then it was Hadrian's turn. Harry Potter. Everyone went silent and turned their attention to the still remaining group of newcomers. Harry Potter, come forward, please. Hadrian took a deep breath before he stepped out of the crowd. I'd prefer if you call me Hadrian Dragon Peverell, because this is my new name. This caused everyone to freeze before several shouts were heard. The headmaster stood up and called everyone to order and to be silent. It took almost a minute in which Hadrian just watched his fingernails, knowing very well it had upset some people even more. My boy, I think there's a slight misunderstanding. I wasn't informed about a name change. Of course not. For my own protection and that of my new family, we decided to let everyone believe I was still living with my Muggle relatives. Only this wouldn't have even been necessary, because no one ever cared to look if I was fine. Well, but I don't want to delay the ceremony. I'm sure there is no one interested in my story anyway. I just wanted to correct Professor McGonagall because, as it seemed, Hogwarts didn't receive message about my new status. He walked to the chair and risked a short glance to the 2 Potters, who looked a bit taken aback. Understandable. If your family is a descendant from the Peverell line, and you might look at someone who could take away your title if wanted, then something seemed to click, and James suddenly stood up. Wait a second. Someone without our permission cannot adopt you. You're our son. And what is this nonsense about taking the name Peverell? Leaving a toddler outside on some doorstep alone in the middle of the night allows everyone who finds them to adopt them. My father checked it several times, and the goblins even confirmed it. You aren't my parents any longer. And when it comes to my name, you better ask my father, Lord Alukard Tempest. After all, it was him who gave it to me. Both Potters paled as he mentioned what they had done, several eyebrows to shot up in question, and him almost to laugh. I must apologize, but you have me on a disadvantage. Who is Lord Tempest? As I said, he's my father. If you wish to find out more about him, you may ask him yourself. I see. Hadrian couldn't make out what the old wizard was thinking, but he didn't seem happy. Albus, you cannot be serious, gritted James out. This is not the time, nor the place to discuss this. Mr. Peverell, we might speak with you later, or at least ask you to invite your father to the castle. For now, there are still students waiting to be sorted. So please continue. The headmaster gave James a meaningful glare before waving his hand as sign for Hadrian to sit down, while he himself sat back on his own chair, while more throne, and titling his head at Minerva to proceed. Well, Mr. Peverell, I apologize for calling you a false name. It's no problem, Professor. Hadrian smiled up at the woman, who gave him a knowing look and a smirk. Then she put the head on his head. Oh, interesting, very, very interesting. The Potter heir returned, but not being a Potter anymore. Well, I wouldn't call me an heir, at least not to the Potter title. I think Peverell suits me much better, don't you think? Can deny the truth, can I? The hat laughed, and Hadrian smirked, which let some people frown in wondering what they were speaking about. So, which house would you send me in? A good question. Let me see. Maybe I should ask which house you prefer, because I'm not sure if you like the house I would want to sort you. Truly, I don't care. If you think Slytherin is the best, then so be it. That's the same for each other house. I don't care if you sort me into Gryffindor as long as you do it, because you think it's due to my character and not because of my former parents. I see. Actually, both houses would suit you well, but there is a voice which tells me to send you to Gryffindor. Hadrian sat for a few more seconds, staring wide-eyed at the wall on the other side before McGonagall nudged him to join his housemates, who cheered to have him in their house. He was still confused about what the hat said, but shook it off when he reached the table, where he would shake hands and smile at the people he would share his life for the next 7 years. "Why didn't you tell me you're Harry Potter?" Ron hadn't stood up like the others, but gave him a sour look. "Because I'm not Harry Potter." "But, Ronald, it's not our place to question him," stated the Weasley twins. "They right. And what does it matter?" asked Hermione. "What does it matter?" "It matters because he just declined his parents." "Parents which have abandoned him, you mean?" "Well, enough. I think I made myself clear, and I'm not interested to explain myself to you. It's not your business in any way. My name is Hadrian, accept it or not. Can we still call you Harry for short, or would it be too strange?" asked Neville. "As long as you have in mind that I'm not Harry Potter, I don't care. The name doesn't mean anything to me, but I'd prefer you call me Hadrian." "Understood. Hadrian it will be then." Hadrian gave Neville a grateful smile, as well as the others, who accepted his claim. Then he turned his attention back to the sorting. There weren't many left, and just as McGonagall wanted to announce the sorting was done, the lights brightened and the doors to the great hall opened, letting everyone turn around to look who was there. Hadrian's heart stopped for a moment, and his breath was taken away. There stood a small, pale child with silver eyes and silver blue hair, falling down straight to their hips. Next to him was an elf, beaming brightly, while leading the child further into the hall. Chapter and notes. It's my third story. I hope you liked the first 2 chapters. If you did, feel free to give a cutto and leave a comment behind. I'm always happy to read the feedbacks. Should you not like it, you can also write a comment, but please remain polite. Any nasty comments will be deleted. Because I'm still in the beginning, I'm open for any ideas from your side. Would you like Dumbledore bashing, or should he be someone good this time? I'm not sure yet, to be honest, which one it'll be. At the moment, I'm trying to keep him neutral. Any wishes for some pairings in the future? Let me know if you have any suggestions or wishes, and I'll see if I can make it possible. Thanks for reading it and giving it a try. Could it be? Chapter summary. Hadrian is shocked and wondering how this could be possible. Could this new student truly be his mate? Chapter notes. Edit by Trickster32. Thank you so much for your comments. Some of you wrote they want Dumbledore bashing, so you'll get it. It'll make a few things so much easier, winking face. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Hadrian stared, not taking his eyes away while the elf led the child through the great hall. He couldn't tell if it was a boy or a girl, but it didn't matter because Hadrian didn't care. He just saw the beauty in the other one's magic surrounding them. His own magic, golden for everyone who could see it, wanted to reach out and cover this beautiful silver moon magical aura. To his own shock, his inner dragon was purring, which could only mean one thing. This was his mate. But this couldn't be. Hadrian was sure his mate died 10 years ago. Who's that? Don't know. I hadn't seen them on the train or when we were waiting outside. Hadrian didn't hear anything what was spoken. His whole attention was on the child, which looked at the ceiling in wonder. They didn't look once to any of the persons in the hall, no matter if student or adult, even if they reached the start of the staircase in front of the staff table. "Mr. Headmaster, Trixie apologizes for the delay. The way for my master had been long. And who, may I ask, are you?" "I'm Trixie, personal elf for little master here. Personal elves are not allowed at Hogwarts. It had been explained in the letter sent to you. Trixie is aware and will go as soon as master is sorted and in good care." Everyone turned silent and watched in mild fascination. Those who grew up with elves as servants looked shocked, or at least these students, which families saw only slaves in their house elves. Hadrian's own elves behaved similar like Trixie, meaning they didn't fear him and had no qualms to spoke for themselves. "Minerva? There is no other name on the scroll albus. There must be a misunderstanding." No misunderstanding. Look again. Master received letter. Here it is." The professor raised an eyebrow, but did as the elf said after taking a short look at the Hogwarts letter and took another glance of the list of names from new students. Her eyes narrowed as she saw a new name which she was sure hadn't been there before, but shrugged it off. "Maybe she's just getting old. Seems you were right. I must have read over the name. My apologize, But may I ask why you haven't been in the Hogwarts Express? Master's father brought him. Wanted to be sure Master arrives safely. I see. Very well. Severus Sephiroth Prince, would you please sit down in this chair, so I can put the sorting hat on your head? It'll tell us know which house will be your home for the next 7 years. Hadrian's eyes widen a little. Severus? Did he heard correct? Does this child, this boy, share the same name as the wizard who protected him? How? Who is he? Where did he come from? Why does he have the feeling he's missing something here? Mr. Prince? Hadrian shook his head to put his questions aside, concentrating back to the scene in front of him. I must apologize. Master gets easily distracted. It's the first time he left his home. Trixie lightly pulled on the boy's robes to get his intention, which seemed to work. He tilted his head to the side and let Trixie lead him to the chair. Hadrian risked a glance at the headmaster, who looked questioning at the elf, but she ignored it as she did with everyone else, who looked curious about what she meant by not leaving his home until now. He watched Professor McGonagall putting the hat on the boy's head and was curious in which house the boy would be sorted. Oh my lady had been very sad as you've disappeared. Therefore, I'm happy to welcome you back. Oh, you're a speaking hat. That's funny. You don't remember me? Should I? Not if that's what Lady Magic had decided. If you say so. Are you aware of the 4 houses in Hogwarts and for what they stay? Severus shrugged and titled his head. Let me explain. Sure. Again, Severus shrugged and listened to the hat's explanation, moving his legs forth and back while everyone stared at him, most thinking he looked cute. Let us see. The 4 houses resemble your more outstanding characteristics. Gryffindor stands for valued bravery, daring, nerve, and chivalry. Ravenclaws are known for their intelligence, knowledge, curiosity, creativity, and wit. Hufflepuffs are valued for their hard work, dedication, patience, loyalty, and fair play. While Slytherin is the house for those with cunning, resourcefulness, leadership, and ambition characteristics. What do you think which house would suit you? Don't know. And there's the problem. I don't know either, but I believe I know in which house I'll sort you anyway, because there was someone else today I had the same problem with. And a little voice is saying you two should be together. Severus had actually stopped to listen to the hat and stared again at the ceiling, which displayed the night sky with so many stars he had never seen before. Okay, snickered the hat. I see you don't care much about what I'm saying, so I make it short. Gryffindor. While they waited for the hat to announce which house Severus will be sorted in, Hadrian heard someone saying, I think he's pretty. What do you mean with pretty? He looks like a girl? Wasn't it for the name, I'd never have considered him being a boy, said Ron next to Hermione, both sitting across from Hadrian. Hermione gave him a hit with her elbow, looking at him in displeasure. What about it? Do you have a problem with how he looks? I agree that he looks pretty. I'm sure he'll become a very handsome man, even if he might look very feminine. There is nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying he looks weird. I don't mean it like an offense. Sorry. I just never saw this kind of hair color, and look how pale he is. He looks as he never has seen the sun. I almost feel pity for him. Reared the redhead back. Hadrian didn't like what he heard. His dragon wanted to burn this idiot across from him, but Hadrian suppressed to show any reaction. Like Hermione, he found the boy very handsome. Silver blue hair, almost snow-white skin, and those silver eyes from another world. Let Hadrian think of an angelic creature. A creature born in darkness, after it sacrificed everything, but came out into the light, reborn. Hadrian shook his head, a little confused about his last thoughts. Before someone could say anything else, the head shouted Gryffindor, and Hadrian's head snapped back to the boy. Before he knew it, he stood and clapped loudly, a smile on his face. He doesn't look like a Gryffindor, stated Ron. And you think you do? Sneered Hadrian, not caring to look at the redhead, who winced. Ah, sorry. Did I say it out loud? Yes, you did, replied Hermione, rolling her eyes. The elf stepped forward again, also grinning when she helped the boy out of the big chair and led him to the Gryffindor table straight to the spot Hadrian stood. He made room and carefully helped him to sit down. Trixie gave him a nod before disappearing. It felt as she had given Severus into his care. Hadrian sat down too, close enough that he was shoulder to shoulder or more shoulder to head to the other boy, who was at least a head and a half smaller than him. And now that he could have a closer look, he noticed that Severus' eyes were not only silver, but was a mix of silver and pale blue. Hi, my name's Hadrian. I'm also a new student. The boy didn't reply, just smiling at him and everyone else who introduced themselves to him. Hadrian wondered if Severus might be mute, which let his stomach twist a little. Not because it made him less attractive, but Hadrian truly wished he could hear his voice. At least, Severus seemed to understand them, which meant he wasn't deaf, or maybe he was and just learned how to read lips. Oi, are you mute or something? You hadn't said anything yet. It's really rude to not introduce yourself properly. Hadrian truly wanted to slap this imbecile. He looked at Severus, who had titled his head and had a neutral expression on his face, like he wasn't sure what the other boy had said. Ron, since when are you caring about manners? Asked the older twins beside them. What? I always do. Clearly not. Or you'd think before you open your mouth. Scoffed Hadrian, which caused the others to snicker. SSH. The headmaster is standing. Interrupted Hermione. They all turned, including Severus, to the staff table. Hadrian had to hold back to put his arm around the smaller boy. Welcome to a new year in Hogwarts. Before we start the banquet, there are some inhabitants of Hogwarts who wants to greet our new students. Suddenly a head appeared in the middle of the table, startling them. Hey, that's nearly Headless Nick. My brother Charlie told us about him, yelled Ron. Ah, welcome new students. I see we have a few special children this year. Welcome to Hogwarts. The ghost looked at Hadrian and Severus, who both looked at him unimpressed. Very special indeed. I hope you'll have fun in Gryffindor. Almost headless? The ghost turned to Hermione, who looked at him with a frown. Yes. The axe, which was used to remove my head, wasn't very sharp, you see, and therefore didn't manage to do a good work. It's very frustrating, you know, because I'm not able to join the hunt of the headless. But, well, I won't keep you from your meal, so please excuse me. The students watched him leave before turning their attention to all the food, which appeared out of nowhere. Whoa, that looks great. Bon appetit, everyone. Ron didn't wait for a response and started to fill his plate with variants of meals and stuffing it into his mouth in the same time. Hadrian crunched his nose in slight disgust before filling his own plate. He also risked a few glances at Severus, and when the boy didn't take anything, he turned around to him. What is it, Severus? Aren't you hungry? Silver blue eyes turned at him, then down to Hadrian's plate, who had put some vegetables and chicken on it. You can take whatever you want, Severus, whispered Hadrian, almost purring. The boy titled his head and watched how others were filling their plates as well. Thin, white, and elegant finger moved forward to grab a piece of chicken. The boy sniffed at it before he bit into it, though it was more nibbling. However, Severus' demeanor changed into something like surprise. He licked his upper lip, which let Hadrian blush, before taking a bigger bite into the chicken. Hadrian didn't think he'd ever enjoy to watch someone eat, but seeing Severus happily trying out different dishes made him happy. The boy was so small and thin, which let Hadrian again wonder where Severus had lived. He didn't seem ill or that someone had abused him, but clearly didn't get enough food, which could be a sign of neglect. But Severus didn't behave as someone who had been neglected. It also seemed Severus hadn't experienced something like that, or had contact to other children or people in general, which could mean he lived far away from any civilization, or that his family didn't want it for anyone to find out about him. Somehow, Hadrian had the feeling it was both. However, all in all, Severus looked healthy, even if a little underweight, and seemed to be a very curious child. When the dinner was over, Dumbledore explained some of the rules, like the Forbidden Forest, as the name was already telling, was forbidden that the third floor in the West Wing was closed and that they should prevent it if they don't wish to die a cruel death. Hadrian just raised a brow at that, even more so when the headmaster was looking at him when he said it. Then he wished them all a good night and ordered the prefects to escort the first years to their houses. Hadrian made sure Severus was at his side all the way up to the Gryffindor Tower. He almost lost him on the moving stairs, but was quick enough to drag Severus with him. The boy wasn't as fast as the others and also looked at everything in mild fascination, which made it hard for Hadrian to keep up with the group. Not that he minded, but he had no clue where the entrance to the Gryffindor dormitories were, and he didn't want to get lost on his first day. He even considered picking up Severus, but remained from doing it. He had to remind himself that for Severus he's a stranger and that he might not appreciate to be carried around. When they arrived, Hadrian sighed in relief, placing himself a little behind Severus so the boy couldn't suddenly disappear. There we are, first years. The entrance is behind this painting of the fat lady. Ah, good evening, newcomers. Welcome to Gryffindor. Some students gasped as suddenly the lady moved and even greeted them. You have to say the password to get inside. It'll change each fortnight. You aren't allowed to give it to anyone outside of your own house. The new password will be on the bulletin board in the common room. Should you forget it, then you have to wait for another student to give it to you. Don't write it down where someone could find it. We won't want someone of the other houses to get inside, at least not without permission. The prefect, Percy Weasley, if Hadrian remembered correct, said the current password, and as he said, the painting moved aside and revealed an entrance. Carefully, Hadrian pushed Severus forward when the boy wouldn't move at first, but both stood shortly after in a big circular common room with several squashy armchairs, tables, and a bulletin board on one side, where different notes were posted. It didn't take long, and Professor McGonagall joined them, smiling at them. Welcome to Gryffindor Tower. This will be your home for the next 7 years. You can use the common room for study, relaxing, or playing, or anything else. Each house has their own Quidditch team. First years aren't allowed, but if you are interested, you can put your names on the list for the next year. The team captain will invite you to try out and see if you have the potential to join the team. Unfortunately, we couldn't claim the cup for the past 5 years, but I'm sure our team will give its best to do this year. You are allowed to watch the matches if you like. Hadrian loved flying and had fun playing with his friends. Maybe he'd give it a shot. The dormitories are separated for girls and boys. Boys aren't allowed to enter the girl dormitories. It's also charmed, so don't even try. It's not the same for the boys' dormitories, because the founders thought girls more trustworthy than boys. McGonagall gave a meaningful look to the girls, expecting them to keep up to the trust given. Your baggage were already transferred and should wait for you. Prefect Weasley will show the boys their dormitories while I take the girls. Last for today. After dinner, I expect everyone under 5th year back into the tower. For 5th and upper years, curfew ends 9 p.m. Prefects as well head girl or head boy are the exception and are helping the Mr. Filch and teachers to control the halls for any rule breakers. So make sure you're back in time, because as punishment you'll get detention and losing house points. Breakfast will start at 7 a.m. You have time until 8:45 a.m. before your first class is starting at 9 a.m. Your schedules are on the board as well, waiting for you in your rooms. You will have your first class with me tomorrow. I expect everyone to be punctual. Don't disappoint me. With that, I wish everyone a good night. Cool me. It's already late, and I still have to show you your places before you can settle in. Follow me. It took them at least 5 minutes to reach the last floor, where all first years would stay. Hadrian was happy that Severus' bed was next to his, followed by Neville, Seamus, Dean, and, which Hadrian considered less luck, Ron on his other side, because this room was also billed like a cycle. It contained 6 4-poster beds with each one having a nightstand next to it and their school trunk on the foot of the bed. It's huge. I wonder if all rooms are so big, said Dean. I'm sure you can go and take a look into the other rooms, replied Seamus. My brother Charlie said that the rooms are all the same. Depending on how many students are arriving, it can also happen that dorms only contains 4 or 5 people. Huh. Don't you think 6 is a little crowded? I have 6 siblings. What do you think? Laughed Ron. Hadrian blends the others out. He didn't mind to share the room with others, even if he had preferred not to share it with this redhead. The boy just rubbed wrong at his nerves, and Hadrian didn't like the feeling he got from him. Something wasn't right, but he was sure he'd find out. When he was done unpacking his school stuff, he made himself ready to go to bed. The day had been long, and he was truly tired. Here, and then he watched Severus, who also ignored their roommates and instead unpacking his own things. Hadrian had been a little worried if Severus had all things needed. He also worried about Severus not speaking, wondering how he would manage the classes, where they had to speak the names of the spells and hexes. He wasn't sure if the boy could do wandless magic, but even then the teachers might prefer if they talk the spells to see if they get them right. Well, Hadrian would find out soon enough, he thought. Oi, there's a bat in here. Really? Where? Over there. Ron pointed at a spot on one of Severus' bedposts, where indeed a small silver blue, same color as Severus' hair, bat was hanging. And it's a bat, dude. Bats are sucking out the blood of their victims, and a rat is known for spreading illnesses. So what about it? rebuked Hadrian. Scabbers is completely fine, I can tell you. He's with my family as long as I can remember. Hadrian frowned at this, but put it aside when Severus reached out and stroked the little head of the bat. Seems it's as familiar, and I don't have any problem with them. Somehow, it's even cool because I don't think there was anyone with a bat as familiar in the train, said Dean. Dante. Hadrian's head snapped around so fast that you could have think he broke his neck. Would you repeat it, please? Dante, his name is Dante. This voice caused Hadrian to get goosebumps, but not in a bad meaning. Severus' voice was smooth, soft, and it let Hadrian's heart beating faster. It's a nice name. You see the owl over there? This is Hedwig, my familiar. Hedwig, why don't you come here and greet Severus and Dante? Hadrian held out his arm to allow the owl to land on it. Severus took his own familiar into his hand, or more let him dangle upside down in the air with little claws wrapped around Severus' finger. Hadrian sat on his bed while Severus stood, what let them be in the same height. They moved their arms so that their familiars were also on eye level and then let them check themselves out while watching. Both didn't make any move, staring at each other, until Hedwig clicked with her beak and Dante responding with a high-pitched tone. That was it. Nothing more happened, and Hadrian snickered, having more expected. Seamus, Dean, and Neville also came over with their familiars, which more or less ended the same way, also with just a short sound from each animal as greeting, before they went silent again. However, when Ron came over with Scabbers on his hand, the other familiars either ignored the rat completely or made an unhappy sound when their owner put them to close for their liking. Your familiars are bullies. They don't even try. Ron stomped back to his bed, while telling his rat that he'd surely find some friends. The others just shrugged, though Hadrian thought it weird. But again, he put the thought aside. He was absolutely sure Severus is his mate. And while he had observed him, he was sure this Severus was the same Severus who saved him, even if he doesn't look like him. But from what he could tell, Severus also was a creature, what might explain his new appearance. Hadrian would ask his father if he could make a trip to Azkaban and check out his theory. All his thoughts and feelings that run through his head the past few hours since Severus' arrival were piecing themselves together and slowly merged to something, which made him giddy to find out the truth. Magic worked in mysterious ways, and to meet a de-aged wizard, with his creature inheritance awoken, could be included to it. Chapter and notes. I hope you like my version of the de-aged Severus. Please keep in mind that he can't remember anything of his former life and grew up in Azkaban, though he had a lot of fun with his new family. Raven 145 quoted for the Malfoys to be good, and I decide why not. If the Marauders are the bad guys, why not make some of the Death Eaters the good guys? However, Voldemort might still be the maniac we all know, except you wish otherwise. So let me know about your thoughts. Hugging face. The first week. Chapter summary. Our Gryffindors have their first week in Hogwarts. Some classes will be better than others, that's for sure. Chapter notes. Edit by Trickster32. My dear readers, I wish you all a Merry Christmas. It might be a little early, but here is my present for you. Smiling face with smiling eyes. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Good morning together. You're early. I hope you slept well. Morning, Hermione. Yes, we just arrived a few minutes ago. How was your first night? Good so far. Where is Ron? Still sleeping. Shrug Hadrian. Oh, well, he has still time. It's not even 8. I'm looking forward to our first lesson with Professor McGonagall. Did you know she's a cat animagus? I'm wondering if we'll learn to become an animagus as well. I don't think it's in the curriculum. Also, you have to register your animagus should you manage to master it, said Neville. Really, why? Because it's illegal if you don't. I assume it's because many use their animagus form for stealing or to harm someone. I think it makes sense then. Would be easier to find a culprit if you know who can turn into which animal. True. Hey, Severus. Who is that? Asked Hermione as she noticed him feeding a small bat hanging in his hair. Dante. Hermione's eyes went big, not really expecting an answer. She needed a few seconds until she shook her head and smiled. That's a nice name. Did you found him Diagon Alley while you were shopping for your school stuff? Severus shook his head as response, while he gave another fruit to his friend. Oh, did your parents gave him to you? Another shake of his head let Hermione frown and looking at Hadrian, who just shrugged. Severus wasn't much of a talker, which was fine, of course. Did you have a familiar, Hermione? He asked instead. No. To be honest, I hadn't looked for one. Maybe later. I can use the school owls to write my parents. You get one. Mustn't be an owl, as you can see. I hadn't planned to get an owl, but my sister wanted to visit the shop for magical menagerie, and somehow it ended with me having an owl. Don't misunderstand me, I love Hedwig, just hadn't expected it. You have a sister? Yeah. Her name is Juna. She's just 4. How cute. Maybe you can introduce us next time if we are back at King's Cross. Sure. They talked a little more and finished their breakfast. They all had their school bags at hand, so neither went back to Gryffindor Tower, where a redhead still laid in his bed. He's too late, whispered Hermione. She sat behind Hadrian and Severus, sharing a desk with Neville. HMPF. Hadrian didn't really care. Somehow, he hadn't expected anything else from the Weasley. They had arrived 10 minutes before class started, and Hadrian led Severus to the right front desk. Seamus and Dean sat on the desk next to them. Hadrian was pleased that people, who seemed nice so far, surrounded his mate. Draco Malfoy sat on the other side of the room. Hadrian already had noticed that the blonde boy often glanced at Severus. So far, he kept his distance, but Hadrian was sure it wouldn't be long and he'd approach him. 10 minutes after the class had started, Ron made his appearances. Panting, he looked around, surely looking for the professor in a free spot. Seems I'm lucky. Professor McGonagall isn't here yet. Why had no one woken me up? Neither of them answered, because the cat, which sat on the front desk, suddenly jumped and transformed midair. Mr. Weasley, I thought I made myself clear yesterday that I expect everyone to be on time. 10 points from Gryffindor and detention with Mr. Filch after dinner. Wait, what? I'd have been on time if someone would have woken me up. In addition, I get lost on the way. 10 more points, Mr. Weasley. Students are responsible for themselves. And I'm sure your dorm mates would have woken you up if you had asked. B. Mr. Weasley. Any other word from you will end in a week detention with Mr. Filch. Therefore, I suggest you sit down, keep your mouth shut, and allow me to continue my class. Ronald swallowed down any further protests and sat down next to a Slytherin with clear disgust written in his face. What an idiot, muttered Seamus, and Hadrian could only agree. I hope charms will be better going as Transfiguration. Nothing against Professor McGonagall or her teaching, but I was looking forward finally to learn some spells. I hope Professor Flitwick will teach us our first today, sighed Dean after they left the classroom. Exactly my thought. I'm more the practical type as just sit there and listen. It becomes boring so fast. I'm not looking forward about history. I fear I'll fall asleep in this class, commented Seamus. Me too. The history professor is a ghost, mentioned Hermione, walking in front of the boys. Seriously? How can a ghost be a professor? Didn't you read the book Hogwarts, the history? Professor Binns had been the history professor even before he died. He came back as ghost and refused to leave, even scared off other professors who were hired to take over the class. Professor Dumbledore decided to let him continue teaching. I'm curious how it'll went. My brother Charlie told us it's very boring. Professor Binns would only mention the Goblin Wars. The group looked over their shoulders and saw Ron trailing behind them. Why didn't you wake me? Because of that, I lost many house points and even got detention. It's like Professor McGonagall said. You hadn't asked, and neither of us is your babysitter. Furthermore, we set up an alarm. You grunted, but went back to sleep when we put them off again. You didn't even notice us getting ready and leaving. We thought you had set up your own alarm, so we didn't want to disturb you. How should we have known that you hadn't done it? Come on, Harry. Friends are helping each other. We aren't friends. I just met you yesterday, and I'm pretty sure I told you that I'd prefer to be called Hadrian. But you also said it wouldn't matter if we call you Harry. Yeah, but only if you mean it as a nickname and not associated to my former name, which you clearly do. How would you know? Because I can hear it in your tone, scoffed Hadrian. Even then, you're Harry Potter. I'm not. And the sooner you learn it, as better it'd be, interrupted Hadrian, this time a little harsher. Ron stayed silent until he noticed where they were going. The library? What do you want here? Start working on the essay McGonagall just gave us as homework. We have still plenty of time until lunch. Our next class is scheduled for the afternoon. So, we have plenty of time to work on it. Come on. We have time until next week. Why not explore the castle a little? Feel free to do it, dismissed Hadrian. He really begun to despise the annoying boy. Fine. It was just a suggestion. No reason to be mean. The others rolled their eyes. Like Hadrian, Ron annoyed them already. In the library, they claimed one of the bigger desks for themselves with enough place for them all. Hadrian went over to the bookshelves with Hermione to find the books they needed for their essay. When they came back to the group, he almost let out a growl as Ron had himself placed beside Severus. To the boys' luck, there was another seat on Severus' other side, or Hadrian might have pushed the idiot out of the seat. Even the others had noticed how possessive Hadrian seemed to be over being close to Severus, even if neither of them really understood it, maybe except for Neville. Hadrian already had the feeling that Neville isn't an ordinary boy, since he met him in Diagon Alley, but also a creature. Sure, it wasn't a secret that Hadrian was a creature, but most seemed not be aware about it. So far, no one asked him about it, and he didn't mention it, if needed. But by the looks Neville sometimes gave him, he was very much aware. Creatures notice other creatures almost at first sight. That's why he knew Severus was also one, even if he didn't know what they were. And he knew they weren't the only ones. But they all kept their heads low, because they knew what can happen if someone finds out and you're not part of the peace treaty, like Hadrian is. But even then, people are withdrawing and suspicious all the time. It was also another reason why Hadrian wasn't sure about the headmaster. On one hand, he had two half-creatures as employees, is often speaking about creature rights from what his father has told him. But on the other hand, he did nothing to improve anything. In contrary, the last few years, the laws have been getting even more stricter. What is this bat doing here? Go away. Suddenly, a weight was thrown against Hadrian, and he suddenly had Severus pressed into his side. His reflexes were fast enough to wrap an arm around Severus' waist, so the boy wasn't landing on the floor. As Hadrian looked down into his mate's face, he saw shock and fear. "Leave!" Hadrian didn't yell. In contrary, it was almost a whisper, but said with enough of a threat in it that even the Muggleborns knew that Hadrian was pissed. Sorry mate. I didn't mean to shove him. The bat in his hair startled me, and truly, I just reacted out of instinct. Leave. This time Hadrian put a little more force behind the words. The room seemed to drop a few degrees. Even the Slytherins next to them went still and felt a shiver running down their spine. To Hadrian's surprise, they hadn't said anything when they placed themselves next to them and even ignored Ron's insults. But, young man, stop being loud in my library. This is a place for reading and silently studying. If you can't keep your mouth shut, then leave. A sudden voice behind them stopped the tension growing even more, and Hadrian let himself relax a little, still holding Severus close to him. He hadn't even noticed that his hand moved up and down Severus' arm in a soothing manner. And as he finally noticed what he did, he turned red and helped Severus back into his chair, but also looking him over for any injuries. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw Draco sitting back as well. However, he was a little surprised when he saw worry in his eyes while observing Severus, though Draco turned away when he noticed Hadrian's gaze on him. And what about him? He has his familiar. Familiars are allowed as long as they stay with their owners and don't do anything. I thought the list of rules hanging outside next to the entrance are clear. I hadn't. Clearly not. Leave my library and come back if you have read and understood the rules. Ron marched off. Hadrian could just shake his head. Not even a day has passed since their arrival, and the boy caused only trouble. Everything all right, Severus? Is Dante fine? Severus moved his hand to his hair, letting his familiar climb in his hand before moving it in front of his face. Dante fluttered with his wings, letting them know he was fine. Severus and Hadrian smiled, and the former put his bat back into his hair, where it almost melted into it. If Dante wasn't moving, you could easily overlook him because of the equal color they shared. Welcome, first-year students. I'm Professor Flitwick, head of House Ravenclaw, and, as you can see, a half-goblin. For the next 7 years, I'll teach you many different charms. The first spell you will learn is the levitation charm. With this, you're able to let things fly or let them hovering midair. As you can see, there is a feather laying in front of you. If not, please lift your hand. The professor watched over the class and nodded when no one gave a sign. Good. Each one of you should have a wand, so please pull it out. To let the feather fly, you have to say Wingardium Leviosa while in the same time moving your wand. Please watch closely how I do it. Flitwick made a quick movement with his wrist while also saying the words. Shortly after his own feather begun to move up into the air. You may think it's easy, but notice that the wording of the spell and the wand movement is very important. If you don't speak it correctly or make the wrong movement, then it won't work, even if you did everything else of it right. Are every one of you ready? There were no complaints, and Flitwick let them train the charm. Hadrian was the first to let his feather fly and received 10 points from Flitwick. He ignored Ron's muttering and instead watched Severus next to him. He hadn't seen his mate's wand yet and could just stare. Never had he seen a wand like this. It was black with a silver pattern embedded winding up its way from bottom to top. Hadrian was sure Severus didn't get this wand from Ollivanders. Especially when he noticed the shocked expression from Flitwick when he had noticed the wand, though he hid it fast. Severus managed to let his feather levitate not long after Hadrian did, received another 5 points for Gryffindor. And before they knew it, the class ended. I hadn't thought it would be so hard, sighed Seamus. It was just our first lesson, yeah? But you managed to get it right after 10 minutes. Maybe, but at least half the class didn't and are most likely in the same mood as you. Furthermore, it was just our second subject. Maybe you will do better in one of the other classes. Or maybe I just don't have the talent like you and need more patience like Flitwick had said. Don't worry. You'll handle it. The next day started with a double class of history together with the Ravenclaws, where they all were fighting not to fall asleep. Even Hadrian had difficulties to stay awake until a weight pressed against his side. Looking down, he was met with silver blue hair and needed a few seconds to register that Severus was leaning into him, fast asleep. His dragon purred, and the rest of the lesson he was smiling, an arm around the smaller boy. After lunch, they had double class in herbology with Hufflepuff. It turned out that Neville had a natural talent in it and earned them a lot of points. After that, they had defense against the dark arts again with Slytherin. Observing the professor, Quirrell was his name, gave Hadrian a weird feeling. Something wasn't right, but he couldn't put a finger on it. The professor was stuttering, which made it difficult to understand him. But when he turned around, Hadrian had the feeling to be watched. And he noticed Severus flinching as well, like he was in pain, which caused Hadrian to suppress his protective instinct or he would put him into his lap. Later, when they were in their dorms, Hadrian asked, "Severus, are you hurt? I noticed you flinching in our last class quite often." Severus titled his head and seemed to think. When Hadrian thought he wouldn't get an answer, he heard a small voice saying, "It's my back. Sometimes it's hurting. They told me that someone had cursed me before my family found me." Another chill run through Hadrian. He still remembered the green light, hitting an invisible barrier directly where the man had stood. He remembered someone screaming in pain, clearing his dried throat. Hadrian asked in a low voice, "Can I see? Maybe it's a bruise you received yesterday after Ron had pushed you." Hadrian hadn't seen Severus naked yet. He always turned away when Severus changed his clothes, wanted to respect his privacy, while in the same time, he let Severus' curtains move so the others couldn't see him as well. He didn't want anyone else to see his mate. Severus looked a little unsure, but removed his clothes until only his pants were left. Beautiful white skin without any traces of neglect or injuries was presented to him. The small boy wasn't even as thin as Hadrian had feared, though he had a very slim body structure. However, he noticed a small scar on Severus' left arm, and the thought why it was there let him shiver. Then Severus turned around, moved his hair out of the way to show him his back. Hadrian took a deep breath, eyes golden. Again, he fought his instincts to wrap his arms around the small boy. His dragon was roaring in their mindscape, wanting to burn something. Severus turned his head to look over his shoulder, feeling the slight outburst of magic. "Are you okay?" asked the boy unsure. Hadrian took 3 deep breaths before he smiled at him. "Yes. Sorry. I hadn't expected it, and the thought that someone hurt you makes me upset. Can I take a closer look, please?" Severus was still wary, but moved closer nonetheless. With careful fingers, Hadrian followed the pattern of a big scar, starting on Severus' right shoulder and ending on his left hip. There were 2 parallel lines on each side of his back, which didn't look like scars, but more as it was part of him. It let Hadrian wonder. However, there was also a bruise on his upper left arm, where Ron had pushed him. So far, he couldn't see anything unusual which could explain the pain. The scar was pale and didn't seem to be infected. But when he used his sight to see magical signatures, he sharply inhaled. There were still traces of black magic. He would have to send his father another letter. If the scar was the result of the killing curse, who knows what it could mean for Severus' health when the black magic stayed. It was strange enough that Severus felt pain after so long, and only if they were close to Professor Quirrell. Or was it the classroom? Maybe there was something inside that caused it, but Hadrian was quite sure it was the professor. He himself felt weird around the man. No matter, Hadrian would have keeping a close eye on Severus. He won't lose his mate again. The next day started with flying, a class Hadrian looked forward. He loved being in the air. However, his excitement dimmed when he noticed the man standing next to Madam Hooch, Professor James Potter. The man looked as he had swallowed a lemon drop whenever a Slytherin arrived, clearly showing his dislike to that house. The Slytherins ignored him, knowing how prejudiced the Potters were. Good morning, class. Today, you'll learn how to call a broom into your hand and how to hovering above the ground. Professor Potter is only here to see if there are any talents among you. Should it be the case, he might consider giving you private lessons, as if he would offer it to a Slytherin. Scoffed one of the Slytherins. Hadrian thought his name was not, but wasn't sure. What was that? Asked the man. Nothing, sir. 10 points from Slytherin because of disrespecting a professor. The boy wanted to protest, but shut his mouth, knowing well it wouldn't do anything and make things worse. If that's handled, then everyone take position next to a broom. Stretch out your arm, open palm to the broom, and say with determination up. Again, Hadrian was the first, followed closely by Malfoy. Ron's broom hit him in his face, which let Hadrian smirk. Other brooms were moving on the ground, but needed more convincing to move up. Mr. Prince, you have to speak louder if you want your broom react. Hadrian immediately turned to his other side, where Potter stood in front of Severus, sneering at him. Come on, it isn't so difficult. You just have to say up. Hadrian saw Severus' hand shaking, and it wasn't only his hand, but his whole body trembled and he seemed frozen in fear. Well, what's your problem? Can't you see that you make him uncomfortable? Sneered Draco to Hadrian's surprise, who was just a second away to say something himself. Potter turned, scowling at the blonde boy. I can't remember having asked you something. 10 points from Slytherin. Draco gritted his teeth. Hadrian was sure he wanted to say something else, but this time he was faster. I agree with Mr. Malfoy. You are making Severus uncomfortable. Oh, what is this? Are you his protector or something? Can Mr. Prince not speak for himself? And if he's scared, then I can only wonder how he was put into Gryffindor. Maybe the hat made a mistake. I can't remember any Gryffindor students being scared about anything. Scoffed Potter. Professor Potter, if you're done, I'd like to continue my class. You aren't here for bickering with students. And both Mr. Peverell and Mr. Malfoy are right when they saying you do make Mr. Prince uncomfortable. So please stand down and just watch or leave. Apologize, Madam Hooch. I'll take my leave. I'll watch another time if they can at least manage to call a broom into their hands. Scoffed Potter and marched away. Madam Hooch shook her head and walked over to Severus. By then everyone else had managed to call their brooms and had been watching. Mr. Prince? Severus stood still frozen when the woman kneeled in front of him. It's fine, Mr. Prince. Mr. Potter is gone. Take a few deep breaths. Severus let his arm fall against his side and begun to sway. Hadrian moved to catch him, but Madam Hooch was faster and picked Severus up. You'll wait until I'm back. Should I find anyone in the air when I come back, you will. Receive detention faster than you can say Quidditch. Am I clear? The students nodded and watched in worry how they vanished into the castle. I knew he doesn't look like a Gryffindor. Professor Potter is right. The hat must have made a mistake. You little blood traitor should keep your mouth shut. This kid knew very well what he did. If this is how Gryffindors treat others even in their own houses, then I don't understand why. Everyone thinks this house contains only light Wixen and is better as the other houses. You little Draco is right. More as in only one occasion, and especially about Professor Potter. And you know that Severus isn't speaking much, and even then he keeps his voice low. Therefore, it wasn't much of a surprise that he'd have some difficulties. And a professor behaving like this isn't a help. Ron gritted his teeth. You're siding with a snake? He isn't alone. I also agree with Draco. Professor Potter was out of order and had no right to scare Severus. Intervened Neville with Seamus and Dean nodding beside him. Draco and the other Slytherins looked a little taken aback by the support. Draco even titled his head as a sign of acknowledgement. Something is wrong with you guys. muttered Ron and shook his head. Hadrian didn't waste his breath to say something to this. He just wanted to go and check on his mate. It took Madame Hooch 15 minutes to come back, saying that Mr. Prince got a calming draft and was cared for by Madame Pomfrey. The class ended without any further incidents, and as soon as Madame Hooch released them, Hadrian went to the infirmary. Severus was sleeping when he entered. Madame Pomfrey allowed him a short visit, where he sat silent next to Severus' bed and watched him. 10 minutes later, Pomfrey sent him away. He wanted to protest, but knew it'd be fruitless. At lunch, Hadrian couldn't eat anything, too worried about Severus. He didn't listen to what was said around him. Someone explained what had happened, and he fattily noticed Ron's muttering or Hermione's scolding. It was after another history class that Hadrian saw Severus again, already waiting outside of the potions lab. Hadrian quickened his pace and smiled brightly when the other boy turned to him, returning a little smile himself. "Are you all right?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" Severus nodded, though he fiddled with the end of his sleeve nervously. Hadrian could imagine the reason, because now they would meet the other Potter, potions professor in Hogwarts. Hadrian sighed, whispering a "let us hope for the best" to himself after the door to the lab opened. "What is he doing?" asked Hermione in a low voice. Professor Evans, as the woman had introduced herself, explaining that it would be easier for everyone to difference the two Potters, gave them a short introduction into potions making. They would use this single class to prepare ingredients for their double potion class on Friday. Right now, Severus was slicing some snake fangs, instead of crushing them as instructed. Hadrian wasn't an expert. Far from it. Potions wasn't his forte, but his father had told him that the adult Severus had been a potions master, the youngest since 300 years. It was one more indication that his instincts weren't lying. One more reason to believe what he hoped was true. "Mr. Prince, I can't remember saying you should slice the snake fangs. It has to be crushed if you want your potion working on Friday." 5 points from Gryffindor for not following instructions, sneered the woman before continuing her round. "Why did you slice it? Can you explain it to me?" "Because it would make the potion more effective." "How so?" "Because you have a better control of the quantity. Too much of fangs can cause a contrary effect. Too little, and the potion isn't much of a help." "I see. Let us do it your way. I trust you." Severus gave him a big smile and continued his work. At night, they had astronomy, and Hadrian was glad they had a lot of time before the first class was starting the next morning. In addition, they would have only 3 single classes the day. On Friday, they had only double potion in the morning, where they were brewing a potion called Cure of Boils. All ingredients were prepared and laid in order on their desk. Hadrian watched in fascination how Severus added one ingredient after the other, not only once looking at the instructions Professor Evans had written on the board. Hadrian noticed the differences and made notes of it. The professor didn't notice anything, though others did. Draco was watching closely and also made notes, Hadrian could tell. He wasn't sure yet what the boy was thinking, but as long as he stayed away, or at least presented no threat, Hadrian wouldn't interfere. Draco wasn't the only one, though. 2 other boys, and of course, Hermione also noticed and were wondering what Severus was doing. Unfortunately, Hermione didn't keep an eye on Ron, who forgot to take off the cauldron from the fire before adding the porcupine quills, which caused a slight explosion and the cauldron to melt. At Ron's panicked yell, Hadrian was already moving and shielded Severus with his own body. Ron and Hermione had to be sent to the hospital wing. To Hadrian's dislike, the woman didn't even ask if anyone else was injured, just assuming it were only those 2 directly working at the cauldron. She didn't even give instruction to anyone to put out the fires or anything, just leaving a first-year class in a dangerous environment without supervision. "Everyone, stop brewing. Since when have we to listen to a Slytherin?" "Do it, Lavender. We are alone, and brewing potions isn't anything you should do without a potion master close by." "Yeah? Your little friend seemed very fine brewing without looking at the instructions." "And I don't remember that it was his cauldron exploding," defended Hadrian. "He seems very confident in what he is doing," intervened another student, and they all turned around to watch Severus, who was just finishing the potion. "Whoa, where did you learn this?" asked Seamus. Severus just shrugged and filled up 2 vials, giving Hadrian the second one. We don't have to mention that Professor Evans took 20 house points from Severus due to continue brewing and therefore endangering other students. Would he have been in Slytherin, Hadrian was sure it would have been more house points. She didn't even take a look on the potion before she vanished the content. Hadrian didn't even try to give her his vial. Instead, he sent it to his father with the next owl. Not even a day later, and he got response from his father confirming his suspicion. Severus Sephiroth Prince was Severus Tobias Snape. Chapter and notes. What's better than to get one update? Exactly 2 updates. So look out for the next chapter as well. Beaming face with smiling eyes. This wasn't the plan. Chapter summary. Our friends, well, 3 friends and an annoying Ron, visit Hagrid in his hut and make an unexpected discovery. Unfortunately, with some serious consequences. Chapter notes. Edit by Trickster32. And comes the next chapter like promised. Happy fun reading it. See the end of the chapter for more notes. A month has passed since their first class, and Hadrian was in a lively exchange with his father, mostly about Severus. His father couldn't hide his excitement, since he found out that Severus was a death angel. A rare creature, a gift from Lady Magic to the world, only born when a Wixen lost everything and sacrificed themselves to save another. In short, a creature born out of darkness, worthy of a second chance in life, meant to be protected and cherished, and able to bring light into darkness, often seen as a sign for a new beginning. Hadrian couldn't share the excitement as much as his father, because of the knowledge how much Severus had suffered, lost, and sacrificed. But he was still grateful that Lady Magic deemed him worthy to get this second chance, gave Hadrian the chance to meet his mate, to protect and cherish him. Of course, he held himself back. So far, Severus didn't show any discomfort with Hadrian constantly being at his side. But Hadrian was unsure if he'd claim Severus, not meant in any improper manner, but he could mark him and let every creature know the boy was his, especially now that he was very sure Draco had also an interest in Severus. The blonde boy followed them around whenever he could, and in class he was almost constantly watching Severus. In potions, Hadrian even noticed how Malfoy observed their surroundings, keeping an eye on the cauldrons of the other students. And 2 times he prevented a potion close enough to harm Severus, to explode, one time even jumping in the way as Severus was just passing a workbench when another cauldron begun to boil over and sputtered its content around the class. Again, Hadrian was grateful, but still he didn't know what Draco's purpose was, except to be happy every time Severus gave him a smile, which let his dragon growl. Hadrian asked his father if he could check out the Malfoys again. There was something amiss, and he wanted to know what it was. In his latest letter, Alukard teased him already about all his requests. Had he known, he would have made a background check on everyone and everything during the past years. Not that he minded, finding it very hilarious actually. However, the fact that Lily Potter reprimanded Severus every time he wasn't following her instructions let even Alucard scowl, especially after Hadrian sent him a vial each time they had brewed a potion. As potion master, Alucard could see how good the potions were. He even brewed both versions after the instructions Hadrian sent him and agreed with Severus' reason why slicing the snake fangs was better than to crush them. As it seemed, the boy hadn't lost his talent for potions. Alucard was even sure Lady Magic hadn't removed his knowledge about potions and whatever he had learned, maybe just locked it away until it was time to remember it, which meant this 11-year-old boy was already a potions master in any way possible and on a complete other level than this witch. He could only wonder whom her master had been or how she managed to get her mastery. No respected potion maker would have ever let her pass an exam when she couldn't even tell if a simple potion was well done or not. Only a month has passed, and already a quarter of the first-year students have landed in the infirmary because she didn't came to the idea to use protection or monitoring charms for the cauldrons, which could alert her when something went wrong. Alucard even wrote to the headmaster and asked about the accidents and why he wasn't informed about his son getting injured during his first class, or why the professor hadn't checked if someone else was injured. As response, he got only an apology that he'd inform the professor to be more aware of injured children should it happen next time again. Alucard just stared at the letter in utter disbelief and read it 3 more times to be sure he didn't misunderstood. He expected that something like this was an exception, but as it seemed it was a regular occurrence, which was confirmed by the regular updates of his son. And again, it was just a month since Hadrian had started school. However, what let him be more worried was the dark magic, causing pain to the little death angel. Daenerys, Severus' adoptive father, and the leader of the Dementors of Azkaban, had told him about a soul shard embedded in the scar on Severus' back. It had been a very painful procedure for the little angel to remove it, and Daenerys mentioned that Severus often felt pain when coming close to some of the prisoners. Alukard thought it might be due to the dark marks. Severus himself had worn it. Hadrian told him it was gone and there was only a scar left, but when it comes to dark magic, it could linger for decades, even if the source removed or destroyed on the subject, always depending how strong or how long it had been infected. Wearing a dark mark for years, infested by dark magic, performing a dark blood ritual, even for protection, being hit by the killing curse, even with a barrier to prevent a direct hit, and followed by being a Horcrux, even if not for long, would of course let an imprint behind. However, the fact that Severus felt pain whenever he got near someone with a dark mark let Alucard wonder if there was still a connection. And what about this Quirrell? Was he also wearing a dark mark? Could this be the reason why Severus felt pain whenever he was near the professor? Hadrian felt also uncomfortable and weird around the man, often feeling watched even if the man didn't even look at him though. Alucard was missing something, but he couldn't find out what his was, but he won't stop looking. They sat in the Great Hall, eating their breakfast, when owls with letters and the Morning Post arrived. Hedwig let the Morning Post fell, before landing graceful next to it, waiting for her owner to give her a reward. Severus sometimes petted her fondly, which she answered with leaning into his touches. "Did you see that? There was an attempted break-in at Gringotts," stated Hermione, already reading her own paper. "Only an attempt?" "Yes. The goblins are saying that the vault they broke in had been already emptied a month ago in order of Albus Dumbledore, friend of the owner. Currently, they investigating." "They didn't mention what was taken?" "No. Just mentioned they informed the owner of the vault." Oh, I almost forgot. Did you have time for a little visit in Hagrid's hut later today? I had an interesting conversation with him a few days ago, and he invited me to continue. Said I'd bring someone if I wanted. What did you talk about? I asked him about creatures. He's a half-giant, and I wondered a little what it meant. It was really interesting. I asked if some of the creatures mentioned in books from the Muggle world are real. Hermione gave him a meaningful look, and Hadrian felt a little embarrassed. "I see. Well, I haven't planned anything for today." "Severus?" Hadrian turned to the smaller boy, who was feeding Hedwig and Dante. The boy nodded in agreement and took another fruit for himself. "What about you?" Hadrian turned to Neville and the others. "Sorry, I'm out. Madam Sprout asked me for some help in her greenhouses today. Dean, and I wanted to watch the Quidditch training." "Sorry, no problem. I'd like to come. Hagrid is nice. Furthermore, I know he had been in Gringotts to get whatever it was in this vault. Maybe he can tell us more," answered Ron, shattering Hadrian's hope he'd go with the other two boys. He could see that Hermione thought the same. "How do you know?" "Oh, I heard Professor Potter speaking with him in one of the halls earlier." Hadrian narrowed his eyes. He didn't like it. Alone the name of his biological father set his instincts on high alert, which was the same with Lily Potter and Quirrell. Well, there was no way out. It'd be rude to ask and then taking it back, even if they were talking about Ron. Now, in the late afternoon, Hadrian found himself, together with Hermione, Severus, and Ron standing in front of Hagrid's hut. When the half-giant finally opened the door, he seemed a little nervous but still let them in. "Hagrid? Everything all right?" asked Hermione, having also noticed his tension. "Oh, yes. I just hadn't expected visitors. But Hagrid, you invited me for today. I also said I'd bring some friends." "Oh, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. We can go if you—" No. I invited you for some tea, so I won't back down." "That would be very rude." "No, I just had an excited week. Had luck when I played with some peoples in the Hog's Head pub." He ushered them to a round table, where they sat down after Fawn greeted them. A big dog almost as tall as Severus, and that without standing on two paws. "Must have been really nice if you forgot our meeting today," snickered Hermione. "Well, met a stranger. We talked a little, had some interesting things with him. Do you want some tea?" "Yes, please." "Oi, Hagrid. Did you heard about the break-in at Gringotts?" "Yeah. Such luck that I already was there to remove what was inside." "What was inside?" "That's a secret. Dumbledore trusted me to get it. It's safe now." "Oh, come on. You can trust us. What was it? Enough. That's between Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel Heir. I shouldn't have said this. Before Ron could press further, something rattled in the kettle and drew their attention to it. In 2 big steps, the half-giant reached the fireplace, put some gloves on, and then removed the kettle from the fireplace, putting it on the table. Then he opened it and reached inside, just to return them with something in his hands. "What is this?" asked Hermione. "Looks like a huge egg." Hagrid snickered, placing the egg on the table. "Well, it looks like an egg because it's an egg. I won it from this stranger I mentioned." "Hagrid, this looks like a dragon egg," said Ron, stunned. Well, the stranger had been worried he couldn't care about it. We talked a little, and I offered him to buy it from him. He wasn't sure, so I told him about my other pets, like Fluffy, for example. Fluffy. Oh, Air, never mind. Didn't need it much to convince him. What seemed a little strange, but well, here I am. But Hagrid, that's illegal. You can't trade something like a dragon egg, not to mention raise them. Where do you think they should live? Spoke Ron, and to his own surprise, Hadrian was in agreement with the redhead. Also that Ron seemed to know something like this. Hermione must have had the same thought because she asked, "My brother Charlie is working in Romania with dragons. He tells us a lot if he comes back for visits. You should inform the headmaster, Hagrid. Or I can ask Charlie. If you hide a dragon and the ministry finds out, they could send you into Azkaban." The egg begun to crack, and they all hold their breaths, especially Hadrian. Seconds later, the egg half exploded and a tiny dragon stood on the table, shaking off the remains of its housing before curiously looking around. "A Norwegian Ridgeback. Charlie mentioned that they are very aggressive." "You can't keep them, Hagrid," screeched Ron. "But look at this little guy." Hagrid tried to pick up the dragon, but he dodged, and to everyone's surprise, or more shock, jumped on Severus' shoulder. Too late, Hadrian noticed what was about to happen as the tiny dragon sniffed and rubbed Severus' neck and cheek. "Shit," was the only thing he managed to say when the dragon vanished under Severus' robes. Severus still wore his thick scarf, and a few minutes later a dragon nested under it with a small head slightly visible under Severus' chin. Severus sat frozen, but didn't seem panicked. Hadrian could just stare in disbelief, as did the others. It took several minutes before someone broke the silence. "By Merlin. That's not good. What the? I'm such an idiot. I shouldn't have allowed you to come in. That's my fault. Oh, damn it. Dumbledore will be so disappointed. And now Severus will be in trouble. And stop. Wait. What do you mean Severus is in trouble? He didn't do anything. And could someone explain, please, what just happened?" interrupted Hermione. Again there was silence. Hadrian was already writing a letter in his head for his father. He surely will roll on the floor, laughing his ass off as soon as he hears about it. "Air. My brother Charlie mentioned that when a dragon hatches, they immediately search for their parents, and when they recognize them, they latch on. Normally, it would be the mother being constantly there and waiting for the offspring arrival. They have an extra spot under their plates near the neck where the offspring can settle. Are you just telling me that this dragon recognizes Severus as their parent?" Yes. How is this possible? He isn't a dragon. Doesn't matter. It can happen. Charlie told me that a few years ago, it happened to one of the Wixen in the reserve after they found an abandoned nest with still an egg inside. They waited for a while, but no adult dragon showed up, so they assumed something must have happened to them. They were just on their way back when the dragon hatched and latched onto the wizard. They couldn't remove the baby dragon. Every time they did, it screamed, whined, or got even sick. "And why exactly didn't you mention it earlier?" groaned Hermione in annoyance. "Sorry. Was still too shocked, and it didn't come to my mind." "Clearly not. And what about your last statement? Does it mean the little one could also scream or whine when we try to separate them?" "Most likely, yes. The little one could even die," answered Hadrian. "Oh no. But what should we do then?" "We have to speak with the headmaster. Dumbledore will know what to do," said Ron. "I'll write my father, just in case the headmaster isn't sure what to do." While they were discussing these things, Severus begun to stroke the tiny little head. He couldn't see the dragon, but felt the warmth of the small body against his skin. It reminded him of the warmth Hadrian radiated whenever he touched him or was very close to him. Severus wasn't cold per se, living in an environment like Azkaban and with creatures as a family, which practically are radiating coldness made him immune to the coldness of a winter. But there was another coldness inside him, woven into his magic and soul, and what let him shiver whenever he felt alone or scared. His family helped to keep the coldness at bay, but since he met Hadrian, the coldness seemed to leave him. Severus didn't understand why, because he felt safe and loved around his family, the same feeling Hadrian gave him, but differently, and he couldn't understand why. Even if he liked it though, and therefore didn't complain. It was just weird, and now, he had this little dragon nestled in his scarf, radiating the same warmth. Severus didn't even notice the very low purr coming from him. Fortunately, neither of the others seemed to notice, well, with the exception of Hadrian, who fought down any reaction to it. He wanted badly the other in his lap, pressed against his chest, and secured with his arms around him. Hey, do you hear this? Shit, thought Hadrian, but sighed in relief when Hagrid starts to laugh, saying, "The little fellow really likes you, Severus. He's even purring. I'm still sorry I brought you into this mess, but I'm sure we find a solution. Would you mind if I call him Norbert?" Norbert? Are you even sure it's a he? Grimaced Ron. Why not? I like the name. And should the dragon be female, you can change the name into Norberta, said Hermione, defending Hagrid's choice of a name. Ah, that's even worse. They both bickered a little more, before Severus interrupted in a low voice. It's a him, and Norbert it will be. You took good care of him. Severus smiled at Hagrid, and the half-giant returned it with teary eyes. Should we go to the headmaster? To be honest, I prefer to keep it down as long as we can, but sooner or later someone will notice the little dragon. Ron jumped from his seat, looking to one of the windows. It was already dark outside, but even that couldn't hide the blonde hair from Malfoy, who ran as soon as Ron noticed him. Shit, that snake will inform his Death Eater father. We shouldn't wait to go to the headmaster. Headmaster Dumbledore wasn't in his office, so they had to wait until the next day. Norbert didn't make any fuss, stayed safely put under Severus' robes, or curled up in the scarf. Hadrian had written his father as soon as they were back in their dorms. At breakfast, he got a letter back which caused him to roll his eyes. Of course, his father found it hilarious. What would it make it even more clear Severus being the perfect mate for him as a tiny baby dragon choosing him as their mother? However, his annoyance changed in a shock at the next lines, where his father assumed Hadrian might have already sent marked Severus, even if it was unconscious. It would be at least one explanation why Norbert chose Severus and not Hadrian. The little dragon must have smelled them both, noticed that Hadrian was a dominant dragon with his scent all around the other boy, which meant for them Severus was the submissive partner and therefore the mother. Hadrian risked a few glances to Severus next to him, noticed how close they sat, and for the first time realized that his body was oozing pheromones, even if it was only a small dose. But when this happened every time they were sitting or walking this close, Hadrian put a hand on his face, trying to hide his embarrassment. How didn't he notice? When did he start? Did it happen the first evening, when this elf put Severus next to him, looking at him with expectations in her eyes before disappearing? Or did it happen after his father confirmed his suspicion that his mate never died and returned to him? Not that it mattered anyway. Hadrian glued to him wherever they went, without Severus ever complaining or showing any sign of rejection, which his instincts must have taken as allowance to claim him. By Merlin, muttered Hadrian, not noticing he said it loudly. Something wrong? Asked Neville, who, Hadrian thought, was hiding a knowing smirk. You know, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Neville titled his head, causing Hadrian to frown, though he waved it off. Shouldn't surprise him. When one of the other students with an active creature inheritance noticed, he continued reading the letter of his father and relaxed. Alukard would write to the Ministry and Dumbledore, and would also come to Hogwarts when needed. As expected, Dumbledore called them to his office as soon as he was back. It was afternoon when they headed to the West Tower. Hagrid was already waiting for them, together with Potter, much to Hadrian's displeasure. You're causing a lot of trouble. Hadrian gritted his teeth, resisting in giving a sarcastic remark. It's not their fault, James. They didn't do anything wrong. It was me who bought a dragon egg, and not them, intervened Hagrid, looking guilty. Hagrid, we already told you it's not your fault. You just wanted to help a stranger and not being rude to kick us out after you invited me and my friends. Neither of us could know that this would happen, soothed Hermione. Maybe, but as Ron said, I broke the law, and I have to face the consequences. And I'm still sorry. Come on, the headmaster is waiting. Let him be the judge of it, scoffed Potter, clearly annoyed. He said the password to the gargoyle, and it moved back, before slowly raising, revealing a staircase. One after another they stepped on it, Severus between Hermione and Hadrian. Reaching the top, the door to the office was already opened. There were two people beside the headmaster waiting for them, and the tension in the room increased immediately. Good afternoon. I heard about a slight incident just occurring yesterday. I received a letter from Lord Tempest and also Lord Malfoy. They all stiffened, except of Severus, who was transfixed on all the weird stuff decorating the office. To clarify what they're saying is true, they also send an expert on the subject. I must say your father is working fast, Mr. Peveril. Unfortunately, I hadn't had time to invite him yet. Maybe you could send him my greetings and thanks. Sure. He offered to come should it be necessary. I see. This are Mr. Clayton, a dragon expert, and Mr. Kingsley from the DMLE, Department of Law Enforcement. He will speak with Hagrid about him winning a dragon egg. Mr. Clayton will take a look on the dragon. So if you could be so nice and show us. They turned to Severus, who was looking at all the paintings of former headmasters and headmistresses. Hadrian gave him a little nudge and put a hand on his back, leading him over where Mr. Clayton stood, fully aware of the eyes on him. The man went down on one knee, smiling softly. Hello, I'm Mr. Clayton. Can I see the little one? Severus stared at the man for a minute, who not once stopped smiling, before he moved his scarf a little and revealed the tiny dragon, curled up and sleeping. Definitely a Norwegian ridgeback. It's too early to say if they're female or male. It's a male. Hagrid named him Norbert. How do you know? Asked the man, surprised. Hadrian just shrugged. Let us say it's a feeling. Should we be wrong, we can change the name, though. I see. I have to examine him. If it's true that he sees Severus as a parent, that might get unpleasant, but it'll give us the certainty of what Lord Tempest has claimed. Please take my apology in advance for causing possible distress, but it has to be done. There was a low growl coming from Hadrian's side, and he stared down wide-eyed at the smaller boy, who stared intensive at the man, who looked also startled at his reaction. Hadrian subtle risked a glance to the other adults, but the headmaster and Potter were in discussion with Hagrid and the Auror. However, he forgot the other two students. Did you just growl? This, of course, got the attention of the other adults, and Hadrian sighed. Must have been his stomach, tried Hadrian to explain. Severus seemed himself a little startled, which caused everyone to snicker. Oh, air. Then maybe we do it quickly. Not sure when dinner is starting. It's still a few hours, but Severus hadn't much at lunch. To be honest, I hadn't much either because of the nervousness. I see. The man looked at Severus and saw the worry in the boy's expression. Hey, how would it be if you wake him up? Maybe it'll cease the distress. Maybe I don't have to. Remove him at all to see how attached little Norbert is. Severus slowly nodded, carefully stroking the tiny head, causing the little dragon to yawn and to lean into the touch. It took Severus a minute, a little more gently nudges until Norbert woke and opened his eyes, while everyone else watched him. Out of the corner of his eyes, Hadrian noticed the headmaster standing next to them, as did Potter, who looked disgusted. Hadrian could remember receiving the same look when the man saw him the first time after his change, shortly before the Dark Lord attacked them, back when he still was a toddler. He wondered if they ever had told anyone what happened, that Lily almost killed him, about all the abuse from both of them. Hadrian was glad they hadn't tried to approach him and played loving parents, at least not yet. Sometimes he even wondered if they knew that he has contact with his grandparents, James' parents. They had been very upset after Lily and James sent Harry away, and Alukard had written them not long after he adopted Hadrian. It was to their luck because Alukard could save them from dragonpox. But even the near-death experience did nothing to improve the relationship between them. Fleamont, Hadrian's grandfather, even mentioned that James seemed upset that they had survived. It was later that Alukard told them about the abuse. Of course, it shocked them, and they apologized not to see it. They didn't doubt anything what Alukard told them. It'll be a shock when James will find out that he wasn't the heir anymore. But for now, they kept them in the dark. His grandparents didn't want to risk endangering their grandchild. That's why they also refrained from disowning James. A high-pitched screech put him out of his musings and back to his mate and child. The thought let him almost snicker, but he swallowed it down when he saw the distressed Norbert, now squirming and snapping in Mr. Clayton's hand. He even hiccuped a small fireball, which caused a ruckus among the adults, but just let the man chuckle in amusement. Okay, little one. I know. Back you go to your caretaker. Severus opened his scarf, where the man put back the upset dragon. Immediately, Norbert nuzzled into Severus, who covered his charge, so only the head was still visible under his chin. Well, there is no mistake. This baby bonded with Mr. Prince. Separating them could mean the death of the little one. We're also too far away to try if Norbert might accept an adult dragon, and even then would be the chance very low. Once they bonded with their parent or adopted parent, the bond can't be broken, not without risking the hatchling to die. But we cannot let a dragon live in Hogwarts. And Mr. Prince is only an 11-year-old boy, hardly capable to take care of himself, less than a dragon. It's ridiculous to think him raising a dragon, scoffed Potter. Well, there is no other option. Furthermore, as long as nobody tries to separate them, it won't be much of a problem. The little one won't wander off for at least the next 6 months. I'm more worried when he becomes too big or his lack being around other dragons. It still puzzles me why he deemed Mr. Prince being a good choice for an adopted parent. Not meant as an offense in your direction, Mr. Prince. But it's the first time I ever heard about something like this happening. Maybe because he's a creature like Mr. Peveril, snarled Potter in disgust. Mr. Clayton's eyes widened, turning to Hadrian. Is this true? Half of it. I'm indeed a creature, a dragon to be precise. Isn't a secret, even if I don't mention it on several occasions. I fear it's my fault that Norbert has a liking on Severus. You're always close to him, right? The hatchling must have smelled your scent and recognized you as kin, but mistook you with Mr. Prince. It can happen. Or Mr. Prince is indeed a dragon as well. No, I know if there is another one. TSK. As if you tell us when it'd be the case. Hadrian gave Potter a meaningful look, saying, and why should I? It's not my place to reveal the secrets of others. And it's not like I hid what I am, not to say that I had a choice in the matter anyway, because it was out the same night a Dark Lord attacked. Many people saw my golden eyes, and Father showed me all newspaper where it was mentioned, so it shouldn't actually be a surprise to anyone. Would it be otherwise, I'd probably kept it to myself, knowing how biased most Wixen are. Hadrian stared at James. Don't say I wouldn't like. You don't. Stop lying to yourself. You had no problem to get rid of me as soon as you could. Not that either you or Lily Potter have ever wanted me in the first place. There was another tense pause before Kingsley cleared his throat. May I suggest we end this for today? Mr. Peveril falls under the jurisdiction of the international laws and what is written in the peace treaty. But I cannot see that he did anything wrong. Mr. Hagrid had explained how he came into the possession of a dragon egg and offered also his memories. Knowing he meant no harm, I'll give him just a warning and a fine of 50 galleons. Kingsley turned to the half-giant. Be careful, Hagrid. Again, and I'll be forced taking you into custody. I know you love creatures, but laws, especially when it comes to trading living beings, were put into place for a good reason. Dragons aren't pets, as aren't other creatures nor are living in the Forbidden Forest. Hagrid hung his head in shame, but thanked Kingsley for not sending him to Azkaban straight away. Coming to Mr. Prince and his charge. Because of dragons standing under species protection, we won't risk to separate them. As Mr. Clayton already explained, it'd most likely end in the little one's death. That Mr. Peveril is a dragon might be even good, because he can help Mr. Prince raising the little one, or at least help to keep him in check and not burning someone or something. I also suggest Mr. Clayton or someone else with experience with dragons will check regularly if everything is fine. Of course, it'll be my pleasure if Mr. Prince has no objections. The man looked down to the small boy, who still stroked Norbert's head, who was already back sleeping. Severus didn't answer, but gave a little nod in acceptance. Well then, is there anything else we have to discuss? No one said something, and Kingsley ended the meeting, saying his goodbyes as did Mr. Clayton, promising he would come back in a week. A month, Hadrian sighed. It had been only a month, and he had already the feeling it was far longer since he started school. Chapter and notes. Hope you liked it. As you surely has noticed, some events will definitely have some other outcomes as you know from the books or movies. So it won't get boring, at least I hope it won't. Please leave comments and cutos if you like my story. Again, I wish you all a Merry Christmas. I hope my presents were to your liking. Until next time, Forbidden Forest. Chapter Summary. Harry and Draco have a talk. while detention served in the Forbidden Forest. Chapter Notes, edit by Trickster32. Happy New Year, my dear readers. I hope all of you had a nice start and everyone is fine. And also a great thank you for all the nice comments. It's my third story, and I'm truly happy that so much people like them. I'm already working on a fourth story, but I won't post it yet, because first I want to finish at least one of my ongoing ones, Grinning Face with Sweat. But it won't be long anymore, because I'm almost done with my first one, A Change of Life. If you didn't notice, there are 2 more stories. You can visit my profile. There you should find them. Maybe you may like them too. Winking Face, Smiling Face with Smiling Eyes. There was one reader who asked for permission to translate and copy my story to another fanfiction site. I want to make it clear that everyone else having the same wish, please ask me in beforehand, even if I may have given a positive response to this person. It's the same for my other stories. Those are my babies, and I'm very proud of them. And as much as I like to share them with as many people as possible, what's also the reason why I write them in English, though it's not my native language, it's not an easy decision to trust anyone else with them. So that was from my side. Enjoy the new chapter. Hugging Face. 3 more weeks passed, and Halloween was close. That Severus was caring for a little dragon spread like a fire, and everyone tried to get a glimpse on Norbert. That Hadrian was a creature, a dragon, and might be responsible for Severus' luck to care for a dragon, also reached everyone's ear. Hermione asked a ton of questions the next days, also a little upset that Hadrian hadn't said something earlier, knowing how interested she is about the magical world and everything it entailed. Hadrian tried to be patient and explained as much he could, but also told Hermione to slow down and respect the privacy of others. She didn't take it very well at first, but apologized later, accepting that Hadrian was right. Neville wasn't surprised at all, while Seamus and Dean were excited and also asked any kind of questions. Truly, Hadrian had thought everyone knew about him being a creature, but forget that it might just for those who grew up in the magical world and less for those coming from the Muggle world. Mr. Clayton visited 1 time per week and was pleased with Norbert's health. Like he had said, the dragon stayed close and hidden under Severus' robes, even if they had class. No teacher complained so far with exception, of course, Evans, who even wanted to forbid Severus to enter the class. Hadrian informed his father, who wrote to the headmaster again, even suggested to come to Hogwarts and mentoring Severus himself in potions should the professor continue to deny him his education. And again, he got a letter with an apology, but also a refusal of his offer, saying it wouldn't be necessary. Alukard only scoffed and threw the letter away. He already found out how he could remove the witch from her post. Her master had been Horace Slughorn, a not very high respected potions master, too much occupied with building up his connections with the higher-ups in society as with brewing, improving, or developing potions. He had as many accidents in his potions class as Evans, which explained a lot. Alukard had no problem to write the potion guild and demand a recheck of her mastery. It might take a while, but Alukard wouldn't allow her to ruin Severus or his own son's education. The same did he with James Potter, who was teaching 6th and 7th year Transfiguration. Unfortunately, it wasn't so easy to find out if he was lacking because of the privacy clause. He would need a student who could tell him if Potter was a good or bad teacher. He had already informed Hadrian about it, and the boy was looking around if there was someone. Best would be a Slytherin because they would have no problem to piss off the man. For now, there wasn't much Alukard could do, only waiting for responses for all his requests. They had another flying class, Professor Potter being there again, much to everyone's displeasure, except Ron, who chatted with the man like they were friends. Severus managed to call the broom into his hand in their 3rd class and beamed proudly, as did Hadrian and Draco, while the others also smiled. Over the weeks, almost everyone adored the little boy. There were only a few, including Ron, who couldn't understand the fuss or why everyone liked him. Severus still didn't talk much, was quiet, did nothing special, and I didn't even know what Quidditch is. For short, he was the complete opposite to most of them, and normally would be an outcast, someone most wouldn't even knew was there when Hadrian wouldn't be at his side, including caring for a dragon. And this was the main reason why Ron despised Severus. He was meant to become best friends with Harry Potter. Wouldn't Severus be there? Then it could be Ron now with a dragon curled up in a scarf. This jealousy must be the reason why Ron did what he did. They had been hovering in the air when suddenly Ron slammed into Severus, causing the smaller boy to lose control over his broom. Severus' broom went higher, bucking up and down, forth and back while also going faster and faster. The boy clung to it as best as he could, eyes closed, with one hand where Norbert was under his robes. Hadrian didn't hesitate and went after him, as did Draco, both ignoring Madame Hooch yelling. Draco had been close and missed Severus' hand about an inch when he lost his grip. Hadrian saw it and dove down. He widened his arms, caught his mate in a swift move, pressing him against his chest, while slowly returning to the group. Madame Hooch was already scolding Ron, gave him a week's detention for endangering another student. Even worse, the student responsible for a dragon, and took 20 house points from Gryffindor. Potter protested, claiming it was just an accident, and that Mr. Prince should have been more aware about his surroundings instead of staring into nothing. Maybe then, this wouldn't have happened. Madame Hooch scowled at him, but said nothing when Hadrian and Draco arrived. She gave them also detention with Hagrid because of ignoring her, though it was only for one time, and she refrained to take house points because they helped said student. She helped Severus back on his feet and looked him up and down, asking if he was fine, which he answered with a hesitant nod. Madame Hooch ended the class at this point, because it was almost over anyway, and led Severus to the hospital wing, just to be sure he and the dragon were truly fine. This wasn't an accident. This weasel did it with purpose, snarled Draco, standing next to him, both watching them leaving. I know. There was a small pause. Thank you. I know Slytherins and Gryffindors usually hate their guts, but I think it's all bullshit. We might have different views on some things, but I swore to myself I won't judge someone just because of who their parents are or which house they're sorted. I confess that my first impression of you wasn't great, because you behaved like an arrogant brat, and your bickering with Ron the first evening before the sorting didn't help. But I noticed how you're watching Severus, how you're trying not to look like a threat to him, and also avoid to start any fights with Gryffindors. I'm not sure why exactly, but I won't complain. If you're interested to become friends with Severus, I won't stand in your way, but let me make something clear. Hadrian stepped forward a little taller than the other boy. Severus is mine. Hurt him, and I'll hurt you. Take it as a threat because it's meant as such. I don't care who your father is or what he is, because I'm sure he isn't a match for me. Hadrian's eyes turned golden for a brief second, and Draco stumbled back a few steps. It took him a few seconds to put himself together, and before he could meet Hadrian's eyes again. I already wondered, but my instincts hadn't lied then. Draco took another deep breath. Peveril, Hadrian, I won't hurt him. I also know that he's your mate, but Draco scanned their surroundings, stepping a little closer, and whispered. I wrote my father, explaining that I found my protege, not in the meaning of a mentor would call his apprentice, but a protector calling his charge. You're a dark elf, said Hadrian in a low voice and in recognition. Yes, like my father. However, he lost his protege 10 years ago, or at least he thought he did. Let me guess, his protege was Severus Snape. Yes, and why couldn't he protect him? Let me explain when we aren't in the open. Maybe tonight when we have our detention with Hagrid. Fine. Both went inside the castle and to the hospital wing, where Severus was just stepping out. He looked still a little shaken, but smiled at both of them when he saw them. Together, made their way to the Great Hall for lunch. In the evening right after dinner, Draco and Hadrian stood in front of Hagrid's hut, waiting for the half-giant to open the door. It was already dark outside, and both felt the cold of the autumn. Good evening, you two. Come in, come in. We still have to wait for Ronald before we can leave. Leave? Yes. There seemed to be something in the forest that's killing unicorns. I'm trying to find out what it is. Hagrid, we're first-year students. We shouldn't even be close to enter this place. Don't worry. Fong and I will be there, and we won't go very far. Promise. Draco and Hadrian shared an unbelieving look, but then shrugged. What better place is to talk? They just have to convince Hagrid to take Ron, and giving them Fong shouldn't be so difficult. And it wasn't. As soon as Ron arrived, they went into the forest. Shortly after, Hadrian made the suggestion of splitting up, with Ron staying with Hagrid, while Hadrian and Draco going with Fong. The redhead didn't complain, and Hagrid didn't either, both vanishing into the darkness and letting them alone. Hadrian and Draco didn't even think to go any further, and just sat down on one of the bigger tree trunks laying around. Hadrian put up a private bubble, preventing anyone to hear them, while also casting a charm to alert them for anything coming close. So why couldn't your father protect Snape? Draco looked impressed about Hadrian's abilities, but focused his attention back to their conversation. Because first his father, my grandfather, forced him to take the Dark Mark and hope father would see the Dark Lord as his protege and not these half-breed, as he liked to call those who had only one magical parent. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it didn't work, much to both their displeasure. However, the Dark Lord used Severus as leverage, who wasn't aware of any of it. My father was often forced to watch Severus getting hurt by the other Death Eaters. When he was still in school, he gave his best to shield Severus, but he was already in his 6th year when Severus arrived, so there wasn't much he could do for him. Snape was also very distrustful. Father hadn't told grandfather at first that he found his protege, but couldn't hide it for long either. You can't imagine how much my father suffered to watch his protege getting hurt again and again without being able to help. He had the slight hope this friend of Severus from Gryffindor might help, but she abandoned him. I know. It was my mother, well, from the biological point of view. The Marauders were also tormenting him. He had no one and went to the only person he thought would give him the power, so others would respect him. A mistake, as he found out later. I see. You're already informed about most. Well, what you are expecting from someone who wanted everything to know about the man who saved him by sacrificing himself. So it's true, then, that he fought the Dark Lord and saved the Potters? Yes, though they made no move to clarify that he was innocent, sneered Hadrian. May I ask why you hate them? Let us first finish your story, and maybe I'll tell you mine. This is about Severus, after all. As his mate, it's my responsibility to make sure he's safe, even if it's from his so-called protectors. Well, I'm not sure if father is still his protector. I mean, not that he'll do anything to harm him, if possible, but when a dark elf can't protect his protege, it can happen that the task will be forwarded to the next generation. We have a long life, as you know, as most of the creatures, and it can happen that we might have different proteges in our life, depending how long they can live, but losing one because of something like happened to father can cost a dark elf a lot, not only his protege. Father might not be able to have another one ever again, but it could also be that Lady Magic shows mercy and let him be a second protector to Severus, giving him another chance to do his duty. Maybe. However, with the Dark Lord still being out there and wearing his mark, father fears a repeat of what happened once. You mean the Dark Lord will force you to take his mark and use Severus as leverage? Draco nodded his head, looking down in shame. Let me write to my dad. He may know a way to remove the Dark Mark. He's a living vampire with a lot of knowledge. He's also trying to find out a few other things I asked him. He also can tell me if your story is true. Draco lifted his head, eyes wide open. What do you mean? Hadrian scoffed. Draco, don't tell me you hadn't asked your father to find everything out about me. Oh, of course. Well, if your dad is a living vampire, it might explain why my father couldn't find anything. Yeah, Dad made sure to make it hard for everyone, especially for people sitting in the ministry. As far as I know, there are only 2 people knowing how my dad truly looks. But you should at least know by now who Lord Alukard Tempest is. Well, yes. He's the leader of the only coven residing in Britain. He's also one who signed the peace treaty, which also means that any creature being part of his coven or is from the same kind as him is protected or at least falls not under some laws the ministry put in place since then. Correct. For me being his adopted son, therefore part of his coven, and in addition being a dragon, means the ministry cannot touch me. Well, doesn't mean for me the same, as well as some of the others. I'm sure you already know who I mean. Yes, though I cannot tell exactly what they are. Severus is protected automatically because of being my mate. If your father and my father agree, we can also include you to our clan, of course, only after you made a vow to never betray us. Understandable. Maybe you could consider including some of the others. Many fear the time the Dark Lord returns. It'd be good if they would have a safe place, so they won't be forced to take the mark. Let me speak to my father first and see if he wants to talk to yours. Should they come to an agreement, they can plan the next steps. After all, it's not my decision who can join the clan and who can't. Again, Draco nodded in understanding. Then Hadrian's charm alerted them for someone coming close. Both stood up, wand in hand, and ready for whatever was coming. They relaxed slightly when they recognized it was just Ron, though they stayed alarmed because the boy was running, widely waving his arms before he finally reached them, heavily panting. W we have to R run. H have to B O out of T the F forest. Where is Hagrid? You don't know. S said, I H have to F flee. And you just run and left him behind? Why you D don't you understand? T there W is something. S something D dark. A sea creature F. Feeding F from a D death U unicorn. D drunk it's B blood, said Ron in panic. One more reason to look whether Hagrid is alright. And no, he's not A alone. S saw and another sea creature H helping H him. Another creature? Ron nodded his head several times before he collapsed to the ground, still panting and trying to control his breathing. Hadrian and Draco shared another glance, but before they could come to a decision, Hagrid appeared together with a creature, looking like a centaur. Thanks, Merlin, you're all right. I shouldn't have taken you into the forest. I hadn't expected something like this. A, are you K kidding? W, what did YEA expect? T, this thing is K killing you unicorns. What are you exactly talking about? Muttered Draco. We don't know what it is, but it isn't a creature. No creature, no matter how dark it might be, would ever attack or kill something pure like a unicorn, knowing very well the consequences by doing so, replied the centaur. And what would that be? A cursed life. Only a being with nothing to lose, but gaining everything, will ever commit such a crime. Unicorn blood can keep you alive, even if you are an inch away from death, but to a terrible price. By slaying something so pure and defenseless, just to save your own life, you will be live a half-life, a cursed life, as soon as the blood touches your lips. But who would risk something like this? Is there no one you can think about, Mr. Peverell? He already tried to kill you once. The Dark Lord. I fear you won't be his only target. Take care about the little angel. Lady Magic watches. Should she decides that the magical world don't deserve her gift, she will take them away. Hadrian wasn't listening any longer, already running back to the castle. He needed to see Severus, see that he was well and still there. What had gotten into him? Which angel? Obliviate. Back in the Gryffindor dorms, Hadrian stood next to Severus' bed, panting. The boy was already asleep, lying on his side, facing Hadrian and covered up to his nose, a tiny dragon head lying on his cheek. Hadrian kneeled down next to the bed, carefully removing a strand of hair from Severus' face. I can't promise you to protect you from any harm, but I promise I'll give my best never to let this monster ever touch you. I promise never to leave you alone, not if I can help it. As long as you allow it, I'll be on your side. So mote it be. It's true then. He's your mate. Hadrian jumped away from the bed, turning and wand ready, pointing to whoever it was who spoke at him. Even if he noticed it was Neville, hands up a sign of meaning no harm. Hadrian didn't relax, not until the other boy bowed as another sign of submission. Please, excuse me. I hadn't meant to startle you. No, I have to apologize. I know you well enough by now to know that you mean no harm. Where are the others? Still in the common room. Ron just came back, speaking about his ordeal in the forest. I saw you running up to the dormitories, but thought you just needed the toilet. But when Ron started, well, I was worried and wanted to check if you were fine. I see. I'm fine. I wasn't there when Ron and Hagrid met. Whatever it was, had a chat with Draco instead. You know he's a creature as well? I assume, yes. And I know there are others. My parents said to keep it secret. You're a Dryad. Yes. We're considered light, at least for now, but you know how fast the Ministry is changing their minds. It just needs one of our kind to run havoc, and the whole race will be declared dark and be hunted. But how did you guess? Your talent with plants. It was the most logical reason. I see. And Draco, that you have to ask him yourself. It's not my place to tell. Neville nodded. Severus is your mate? Yes. And he's the same Severus who everyone believed died 10 years ago. It wasn't a question, and Hadrian narrowed his eyes. How do you know it? Dryads can speak with plants. And the plants in the greenhouses recognized him, or better his magic. Some of them are very old. Furthermore, since his return, Hogwarts as a whole seemed brighter. You have noticed how the candles lit up before he entered the Great Hall. It had also an impact on the plants, of course. Everything is connected inside the castle. I heard Madame Sprout once muttering that it was about time that one of her solution works. No clue it was because Hogwarts excitement. I see. Hadrian sat down on the edge of Severus' bed, softly stroking his silver blue hair. Did you inform your parents? Yes. And they're very excited. We're owing him a life debt. Without his warning, we could be dead, or worse, my parents could have been tortured to insanity, while I could have lost almost all my magic. The Lestrange are known for playing with their victims. Neville kneeled down next to Hadrian, also looking at the sleeping boy. My parents want to start a campaign to honor their savior, covered up as honoring all the fallen heroes in the war. Severus might have been declared innocent for the attempted murder of the Potters or helping the Dark Lord. But as you probably know, his name is far from clean, and the whole matter was shoved under a thick blanket after it was over. The people only see what they want to see. For the light and neutral Wixen, Severus Snape will always be the Death Eater scum and evil Slytherin. And for the Death Eaters, he will be the traitor and the one responsible for his defeat. Should it come out who he is, they will hunt him down. Better to prepare and show at least one side, that the older ones switch side and save people. Let us hope it'll take a while, or better, will never happen coming out. Hadrian gave a light kiss on Severus' temple before retreating. An encounter with Fluffy and a troll. Chapter notes. Edit by Trickster32. Hadrian, Severus, Hermione, and Ron were on their way back to the Gryffindor Tower. It was the day after having detention with Hagrid, and they just finished dinner. Still, Ron annoyed Hadrian a lot. All day the boy muttered about the incident in the forest. Hadrian wished Draco had removed more of his memories as just the part what the Centaur had said about Lady Magic possible taking away his angel. Draco hadn't hesitated, not wanting to risk that Ron might come to the conclusion about whom the Centaur had spoken about and run to the headmaster or anyone else to spit out that Severus was another creature. The day itself was uneventful. In Transfiguration, they had learned the alphabet and were now trying to turn a match into a needle. It was harder than Hadrian had imaged. This time it was one of the Slytherins getting it first, followed by Hermione. Even Seamus got it right before Hadrian finally succeeded, making the boy very much proud of himself, despite the fact that he complained at the beginning how boring the class was. In herbology, they were learning the fire-making spell and showed them some of the more dangerous plants they would learn later how to handle. In charms, Professor Flitwick begun to teach them the cheering charm. At dinner, students whispered about the rumors running through the school, wondering if Ron lost it or if he truly saw the Dark Lord. Some of the Gryffindors were asking Hadrian if he had seen it too, but he declined, saying he had been with Draco and Fong, Hagrid's dog. Hadrian ignored most of the talks, more concentrating on Severus, who had to split Dante and Norbert apart again. They came along just fine, but sometimes they would fight who would get the first meal. They never hurt Severus, just hissing or squeaking at each other. It was quite funny. Severus would either tap them both lightly on their heads as a kind of scolding or separate them by moving Dante to one side of his head, while putting Norbert on his shoulder on the opposite side. When they wouldn't stop, Severus put them down and ignored them, which they didn't like one bit. It just needed 2 times for it to happen, and both learned to stop as soon as Severus got intervened in their bickering. But most of the time, they stayed cuddled into their spots, Dante merging with Severus' hair and Norbert snuggled up under the clothes. When they finished, Hadrian, Severus, and Hermione got up and made their way back to the Gryffindor Tower. Shortly before they reached the moving stairs, Ron reached them. "Hey, wait. Why are you so in a hurry?" "We aren't in a hurry. We were done and wanted to use the rest of the evening to go through our notices," replied Hermione. "HMPF. You're really no fun. You could have stayed in the hall with the others. No one is forcing you to stay with us." "Oh, come on. I'm just trying to become friends with you. If you wanted to, then you'd already have apologized to Severus for the stunt yesterday. And I'm very much aware it wasn't an accident." Hadrian stared at the boy with golden eyes. "Try this again, and neither Potter nor the headmaster will be able to help you." Ron gulped and took a step back, almost stumbling from the stairs, as they suddenly started moving. Hadrian also was thrust against the railing, while Hermione and Severus clung to the opposite side. As soon as the stairs stopped, Hadrian went over to help Severus standing up again. "We better get off of them before they decide to move again," suggested Hermione, already moving. Hadrian didn't protest, and a few seconds later, they stood in an empty corridor. Isn't this the 3rd floor Dumbledore warned us not to enter?" asked a nervous Ron. Hadrian as well noticed the unusual darkness. "I think we have another problem," said Hermione, pointing at Mrs. Norris, who everyone was fearing because where the cat was the caretaker of Hogwarts wasn't far behind. Hadrian couldn't say if the cat had no sense for any dangerous people or if she was the bravest cat he ever met. He couldn't tell, except that she hated all students and liked to hunt rule breakers and to sell them out to her owner. At the end, they decided to run until they reached the end of the floor and opened a door where they tried to hide. "Hey, why don't we let Severus handle her? Animals seem to love him." "Don't even think about it," snarled Hadrian, again letting Ron stumble back, hands in the air. "Sorry, mate. Don't call me that. I told you already, there is only one who is ever be allowed to call me that. We shouldn't argue anymore. Let's try to get away before Mrs. Norris finds us, or worse, Filch," whispered Hermione. Hadrian was still staring at Ron, as Severus gave him a nudge, and pointed behind them. Turning, Hadrian's eyes went big, immediately shoving Severus behind him while focusing on the huge, three-headed dog. Neither of them spoke, straightening up when one of the head began sniffing the air, followed by the others. The dog lifted his head, opened his eyes, and then loomed over the four students. Ron and Hermione were screaming before they turned and opened the door. Hadrian, however, was standing and continued staring at the dog with golden eyes, letting his whole dragon aura flooding the room. It was enough to let the dog hesitate while he slowly pushed Severus through the still open door. Just as they were on the other side, the three-headed shook out from his stunned state and snapped after them, bouncing against a closing door. "Whoa! Who came to the idea to hold a three-headed dog in the castle?" exclaimed Ron, panting. "This thing wasn't there without a reason. Didn't you see the trapdoor on the floor? I think he's guarding it," announced Hermione. "No matter. Better we return and forget what happened." Hadrian was fuming over Severus, who looked very pale. Hadrian noticed also the slight trembling and put an arm around the smaller boy's shoulder, who immediately pressed himself closer into Harry's side, which let Ron sneer, though he tried to hide it by looking away. Mrs. Norris seemed to be gone. "Let us move then, before we run into another surprise," suggested Hermione, which the others answered with a nod. 10 minutes later, they were in their dormitories, preparing to go to bed, all sense of going through their notes of the day gone. Hadrian sat on the edge of Severus' bed, after helping him to get on it and under the blankets. Hadrian wondered why Severus had such a reaction. It was more as just fear. No, Severus had been terrified, as he would already have encountered something like this dog. He couldn't remember his father telling him anything about such an incident happening. But who knows? They didn't talk about their encounter with Fluffy, because the next week everyone was excited to celebrate Halloween. The Weasley twins thought about any pranks while others told the younger students about the feast. And then, the day was already there, and everyone sat at the tables and were talking and laughing, except Hermione, and very much to Hadrian's disliking, Severus also missing. The headmaster invited Harry for tea, and as much as he wanted to decline, he couldn't. He had no reason, and Hadrian was also curious what the old man wanted from him. However, now sitting in the Great Hall without knowing where his mate was made Hadrian very grumpy, especially after his discussion with the headmaster. Flashback. "Thanks coming, Harry, my boy." Hadrian wasn't even fully inside when the headmaster greeted him, and Hadrian almost turned and left when he saw both Potters were also there. He had the sinking feeling the headmaster planned to reunite the family. "Good afternoon, Headmaster Dumbledore. You didn't mention we would have company. Professor Potter, Professor Evans, good afternoon as well." Hadrian laughed at their shocked faces, inwardly. Yes, if Hadrian wanted, he could be very polite. "Harry," greeted his former mother, "my name is Hadrian, and I must ask that you call me Mr. Peveril. I may be only 11, but customs dictate that students are addressed with their surnames, except they give permission to do otherwise." Hadrian could see how James bit on his cheeks to prevent saying anything. "Ah, that's correct, but you see we are alone, and it shouldn't be much of a problem. If you want, you can call me Albus, and they are, after all, your parents. Professor Dumbledore, the moment they left me on the doorsteps outside of her sister's house." Hadrian pointed at Lily without looking at her. "They lost every right being my parents." "But Harry," Mr. Peveril, the headmaster didn't stop smiling at Hadrian. But the boy could see the frustration in the man's eyes, but having no clue what the old coot actually expected. "Mr. Peveril, I talked with your parents, and they are very sorry. They just wanted to protect you, and your mother's sister would surely have loved to have you." Hadrian laughed, stopping the headmaster in his tracks. "Headmaster, my father and I watched what this muggles did to my golem. Didn't Mrs. Potter tell you how much her sister hated everything magical? How her own sister despises her, yelling insults and other profanities at her? The Potters went pale, and Hadrian smirked. I'm sorry, headmaster, should you not have been aware of the fact, but now that you're informed, I'd like if you refrain from trying to reunite me with this people. I'll also inform my father about this meeting. What are you, a little sneak, who tells everything he doesn't like to his caretaker? Sneered Potter. When it involves my personal safety and his state as my adoptive father, then yes. There isn't much I wouldn't tell him. It's our agreement since I was a toddler almost killed by a maniac shortly after his own mother almost killed her son. Excuse me, interrupted Dumbledore, wide-eyed. Oh, something else they didn't tell you? What are you talking about? Lily would never kill her child, neither would I. It's true that you almost died before the Dark Lord attacked, but it was because you swallowed a small piece of a toy. Lily had saved you from suffocating on it. Hadrian stared at the Potters. I truly don't understand what you're trying here. I won't come back and play your son. I have a family, and you don't even show any sign that you'd want me truly back. I can see it in your body language, eyes, how I even feel it in your magic. So don't pretend you care about me, you little brat. 20 points from Gryffindor, snarled James. Why are you taking house points from me? I'm just telling the truth, and I thought this is a private meeting, asked Hadrian, bewildered before turning to the headmaster. Professor Dumbledore, if that's how it goes, then I'll leave. I don't want to lose house points by just telling the truth, even if it's upsetting. My housemates doesn't deserve to risk losing a chance to win the House Cup because of it. I'll also ask you to inform my father if you want talking to me in private again. It wasn't very nice not to inform me about others participating as well. Hadrian stood and left, not looking back at the stunned headmaster, who hadn't expected this. In flashback, does someone knows where Hermione and Severus are? Asked Hadrian. Hermione run off into one of the girls' bathroom, crying. Don't know about Severus, replied Ron, while munching on some dessert. No wonder after what you said when we left the charms classroom. She only tried to help you, said Neville. Puffed. Her superior attitude is annoying. You say it wrong. It's Wingardium Leviosa, not Leviosa, drawled Ron. And it's exactly how you have to speak it when you want the charm working. We're practicing it for weeks, but you still haven't managed it. Practicing? We just tried it in our classes a few times, and then not even in each lesson. And now that we're learning the next spell, I won't be able to do more practice. And why do you think is it that most have succeeded? Flitwick told us we should practice it in our free period. Yeah? Can't remember. I thought I wasn't allowed to perform magic outside of class. Ron frowned. Only when it comes to spells which could seriously harm someone when you do it wrong. You really don't listen in class, snorted Dean. Hey, that's not true. The bickering continued, but Hadrian zoned them all out while considering if he should go and search for Severus. And then all color drained from his face when suddenly Professor Quirrell burst into the hall and yelling a troll was in the castle. Thanks, Severus. You didn't have to stay. You'd be in the Great Hall with the others. Hadrian surely is worried you not being there. Severus titled his head. Why? Because he likes you, snickered Hermione. She found it very amusing that everyone noticed Hadrian's attachment to the smaller boy, except Severus. She did some reading about creatures, also asking Hagrid, and was very much obvious that Severus was Hadrian's mate, or at least it was most accurate explanation why he was so protective about a boy he just met. He likes you too, and Neville. Maybe, but it's not exactly what I mean. Severus titled his head to the other side, not understanding what she meant. Don't worry. For him, you're just more as a friend. And I'm not truly sure if Hadrian sees me as a friend. He does. Hermione raised an eyebrow, but smiled when Severus stroked the little head of Norbert. Her tears were gone, and she was truly grateful for Severus being here. You know, as boy, being in a girl's bathroom will cost you most likely a detention with Filch, but I'm grateful for you coming to comfort me. Ron isn't the only one who is speaking about my attitude behind my back. The other girls also don't like if I'm trying to help them. Another flood of tears threatens to fall, and Hermione quickly rubbed her eyes. I can't help it. Since I know about the wizarding world, I asked for every book I'd get my hands on. I even learned 1 or 2 spells before I even entered the Hogwarts Express. My parents had asked for a tutor who could teach me some basics, you know? Would I have been born a month earlier, I'd be in my 2nd year now. So you see, I love to learn, and I was informed about me being a witch when I was 11, almost a full year before I'd start with school. So I asked my parents, and fortunately, we'd afford to hire a tutor for me. And I truly don't understand what the problem is. I'm just trying to help, and there are others, like Hadrian or you, who are much better than me. And I thought that people like Ron, who was born into the wizarding world, would already know a lot more spells. I hadn't known that all. Children get their wands after they get their Hogwarts invitation. My studies were more of theoretical basis before I'd practice any spells. My tutor was very proud if I managed to perform the Reparo spell. It helps to repair broken things. Hermione continued to tell him some more things. Severus didn't say anything, but listened while both played with Norbert until the little dragon hissed and vanished under Severus' robes. Hermione stopped her telling and froze when she looked up. Severus noticed and also turned just to look straight into Blue eyes. "Sure, please. I'm not here to harm you. There is a troll coming in our direction. We have to be quiet." "Hey, a troll?" whispered Hermione. "Yes. I don't know how it come in, but we need to get away from it. Trolls make no difference between animals, creatures, or humans. If it finds us, it'll try to kill us." The boy put a hand to Severus' arm to help him up, while also offering Hermione a hand. "Let me check if the air is clear." Hermione and Severus watched the blonde boy walking to the entrance, but it wasn't even a second, and he run back to them, ushering them into one of the cabins, pulling them down and having a finger on his mouth. Not even a few seconds later, and they heard and smelled the troll entering the bathroom. Hermione's eyes went big, and she held a hand over her mouth. The blonde boy had his wand ready to defend them. It was silent for a moment, but then they noticed movement above them. Looking up, Hermione screamed while Draco cursed, pushing the door open, which forced the troll to step back. All three were now standing in the open, facing the troll, Draco in front of the other two. "What should we do? They're blocking the entrance." "Watch out!" yelled Hermione as the troll swung his club. Draco jumped forward, hoping the troll would go after him. But to his bad luck, the troll charged for the other two. Both moved back, trying to avoid the hit. They crouched under the last sink, eyes closed when the troll smashed the sink next to them. Severus immediately pulled Hermione over to the nearby cabin, where they started crawling from one to the next, but stopped when the troll destroyed all the cabins by swinging their club from one side to the next above them. Draco tried any spell he knew to get the troll's attention, but could only watch in horror when the beast destroyed all the cabins. Hermione screamed, lying next to Severus, both covering their heads with their hands. Severus hadn't noticed how Dante escaped until he felt him settle back into his hair and hearing a very familiar growl. Hadrian stared at the Dada professor in disbelief. Wasn't he a master in defense? He should know how to take care about a troll. But the man stormed to the staff table, screaming about a troll in the dungeons before losing consciousness. The students immediately panicked and wanted to run, but the headmaster called them to order before giving instructions to the prefects to escort them back to their houses, while he and the other staff would go and take care about the troll. On their way back, Hadrian only hoped that Severus and Hermione were already back in Gryffindor Tower, but it vanished as soon as he saw the small bat, Severus' bat, flying up to him, circling his head one time before returning the way Dante came from. Hadrian didn't hesitate 1 second and run after Dante, just running faster when hearing Hermione screaming. He hadn't even noticed that Ron and Neville were following. Reaching the bathroom, he stopped next to Draco, who cursed under breath and only noticed him when Hadrian deeply growled, which finally get the attention of the huge troll. "Where are Hermione and Severus?" asked Hadrian, not taking his gaze away from the troll. "They lay under the rubble. That thing wouldn't let up from them, and no matter what I did, it ignored me," panted Draco. "Well, let me handle the troll. Try to get them out," ordered Hadrian, casting a stinging hex at the troll, who just was turning back to its prey. Hadrian ran forward, wrapping his arms around the wrist, just as the troll again lifted his arm with the club. When he was lifted above the troll's head, Hadrian let go and landed on the shoulders, startling the troll even more when he blinded them with his hands. Hadrian yelled to the other two. He noticed were also there, while Draco was already running to the spot where Hermione was slowly emerging. Ron didn't move, frozen in fear on the spot, and it was Neville who pointed his wand at the troll and cast the levitation spell. The troll lost its hold, just when he wanted to swing the club at Draco and Hermione, who were now reaching out to Severus. The troll stopped and stared at his now empty hand before lifting its gaze up. Neville didn't waste any time and hit the troll with the club several times against the head until it finally buckled and fell forward. Hadrian jumped and landed right next to Neville. He gave him a pat on the shoulder before moving over, helping the other two to get Severus out at the same time as some of the staff arrived. "What is the meaning of this? You all should be in your common rooms," scolded McGonagall. "Running after a mountain troll isn't something first years should do." "Professor, we were just searching for Hermione and Severus. They were not in the Great Hall, and when we were led back, I saw Severus familiar. There was no time to search for a teacher," explained Hadrian. "It's my fault. I was upset and hid in the bathroom. Severus found me and we talked. Draco had been the first who arrived even before the troll. He was trying to protect us. Hadrian and the others arrived just in time before the troll could harm any of us," intervened Hermione. "I see. Still, I remember seeing Mr. Weasley and Mr. Longbottom at the feast, so at least one of them could have informed the prefect. Ms. Granger, Mr. Prince, 5 points from each from you. Mr. Malfoy, I will neither give nor take points, because you went against the rules too, but also tried to protect them. The same for you three as well, though I'll give 5 points for successfully subduing the troll." "Are we sure that the troll wasn't led by one of them to come here?" sneered Potter, giving a meaningful look to the only Slytherin among the group. Draco didn't show any reaction, but Hadrian knew he wanted to though. "If he wanted the troll to harm them, I'm sure Draco wouldn't be here," defended Hadrian. "Yeah. Draco even tried to distract the troll, but it kept coming after Severus and I," added Hermione. "Enough. I'll escort you all to the infirmary, where Madame Pomfrey will examine you. Meanwhile, Professor Potter will take care about the troll together with Professor Evans and Professor Flitwick. I'll also inform the headmaster." Just as they wanted to leave, Professor Quirrell arrived, stuttering about how impressed he was. Hadrian felt Severus shivering next to him and was glad that McGonagall wasted no time to inform the man what happened, instead telling Potter to do it. It didn't take long for Madame Pomfrey checking them over. Hermione and Severus had some minor scratches, which were gone after putting some salve on them. Norbert was also fine, even if a little more clingy as before, which was normal. As soon as they were done, McGonagall led them back to the Gryffindor Tower, while Professor Vector, the head of House Slytherin, picked Draco up after Minerva had called for her. At night, Hadrian stared at Severus, watching him sleeping, while he himself couldn't, thinking over and over again what might have happened when he hadn't reached them on time. The thought let his heart clench painfully in his chest, and he wanted nothing more as to hold Severus in his arms, but restrained himself to climb into Severus' bed. Later, he felt sudden movement, causing him to open his eyes. He hadn't realized were close, and could only stare in fascination as a small figure climbed into his own bed, under his blanket, and snuggling up to him. Hadrian knew, of course, it was Severus, but he hadn't expected this to happen. When he wanted to ask, he noticed Severus was already back sleeping, very content and purring lowly when Hadrian wrapped his arms around him, burying his head into Severus' hair. "I can't believe it. What is happening in this school? Every time your brother writes me, there is something else. He's like a trouble magnet, or more his mate seems to be. It begins to worry me." Alukard sat on the couch with little Juna in his lap, reading another letter from his son. It was the day after Halloween, and Alukard couldn't believe that his son fought against a troll to save his mate. "Papa, can we visit Hadrian? I miss him." "Oh, we will pay a visit to the school next weekend, no matter what the headmaster says." "Really? Will we meet Severus as well? I want to meet him." Juna bounced excited up and down in Alucard's lap. "Sure thing. I want to meet him as well, our little death angel. But remember not to mention it in the school." "Yes, HM. We could ask him if he wants to stay with us over the holidays. I doubt he'll go home, and Hadrian won't let him be alone in Hogwarts. I hope he says yes. I'm sure he will." Alucard gave Juna a kiss on her forehead before writing another letter to his son. "Maybe we should invite the Malfoys as well. It'd give us the opportunity to see if they're worth to be considered joining our clan or our protection. So far, this Draco boy seems determined to protect his protege." "My lord, you got an invitation from Lord Malfoy." "Oh, let me see, Lise." Elizabeth walked over and handed him the letter. Did Hadrian send you another letter? How was Halloween at Hogwarts? Read for yourself. I swear if I wasn't a living vampire, I might have gray hair by now. He gave her the letter from Hadrian, while he opened the one from Lord Malfoy. Both were reading in silence, though Alucard's was much shorter, so he started to reply while Elizabeth was still reading. A troll? What's happening in this school? Exactly my question as well. I don't even know where to start. With a ghost teaching history? A witch teaching potion? Who can't even tell if a potion is well done or not? A professor who is fun to intimidate students? Oh, and not to forget, is so biased that he takes house points and gives detention to any Slytherin who dared to blink, less open their mouths, to defend someone else. Or this dada professor, who gives Hadrian goosebumps and seems to have an impact on Severus, who still is infected by dark magic. And then this, headmaster, I know. Wouldn't it be because Hadrian found his mate, I'd have regretted it we let him go. However, I'm worried about his education and more about their safety. I mean, just last week Hadrian wrote about a three-headed dog in the castle. Can't we just take them both out of the school and tutor them here? No, unfortunately not. I'd arrange it for Hadrian, but I'm not Severus' magical guardian, and Daenerys said it was Lady Magic's wish that Severus returns to Hogwarts. However, it doesn't mean we can't do something about the safety precautions. I don't like how the headmaster is handling things. When I go to the Malfoys, it'll be one more topic on my agenda, because Lord Malfoy is part of the school board. I want to know why they do nothing. Will you take us all with you, or will you go alone? I will go alone. I won't take Hadrian, lest Severus into the snake's pit. Not before I don't know who is an ally or not. The Malfoy boy told Hadrian that there are families with creature inheritance among them, who had been forced to join the Dark Lord or were blinded and noticed to late the mistake, practical the same as Severus. Alucard closed the envelopes with his letters and walked over where Hedwig and another owl waited for him. But I promise you, I won't let this witch, teaching potions, continue to hinder Severus. This boy didn't lose any of his abilities or knowledge about potions, and is as much a potion master as I am. Even better, I'd guess. But how will you do it? You can't just take the boy out of class and announce he has a mastery. Indeed not, but I can go and offer the boy an apprenticeship. Hadrian sent me some of the boy's potions and notes with what he had done to improve them. It may be unusual, but nothing what hadn't happened before. And it would give me a reason to live in Hogwarts even without being a professor. I see. What about Juna? What about her? Of course, she will come with me. Really, Papa? Will we move in next week? No, next week we'll only pay a visit. It won't be before the next term is starting. First, I have to ask Severus if he accepts my offer, then I have to discuss it with the headmaster and also the school board. The Potion Guild won't make a fuzz, and Daenerys won't complain either, knowing Severus will need all the protection he can get as long as he isn't with his family. And what about Hadrian? Will you teach him potions as well? Not as my apprentice. Hadrian hasn't much of a talent for potions, and he knows it. But I won't let it happen that this pseudo-potion master, which will ruin him completely in the subject. Maybe there's a way I can become a second potion professor, or can become a tutor for those who have difficulties in the subject. It's also something I have to talk about with Malfoy. Maybe he can help me to get inside Hogwarts without drawing too much attention to it. Didn't Hadrian mention another student who is very talented in herbology? Maybe you could arrange an apprenticeship for him as well. Funny thing, the mentioned student is a dryad, namely Neville Longbottom. His parents are starting a campaign to remind everyone who the one had been defeating the Dark Lord and saving a toddler, of course, disguised by honoring those who had lost their lives as well fighting the dark side. Not that they doesn't deserve it, but it's a good plan to ensure that at least the name Severus Snape will hopefully have a better reputation should it come out who he is today. Did you contact the Longbottoms as well? Not yet, but it's on my list. For now, my priorities are to figure out who are the enemies and what's going on in Hogwarts. I'll offer the Longbottoms my protection should it come out that their son is a creature before I can talk to them. You know that I can help you. I know, Lise. But you know that I rather talk myself with the people who might become my responsibility either because I offer them protection or by joining my clan. As much as I trust you, but I swore to myself that I wouldn't make the same mistake twice. I apologize. I know how serious you take your responsibility. You don't need to apologize, Lise. I'll need your help soon enough. You'll have an eye on everything while I am in the school. I see. But your idea with the Longbottom boy is a good one. And I think I've already someone in mind who will be very excited to have a dryad as apprentice. I'll write them later. For now, Juna needs her meal and nap. Alukard picked his daughter up. See you later, Lise. Until then, my lord. The woman gave him a light bow, a kiss on Juna's cheek, and then watched them leave. Confessions. Chapter summary. Hadrian has a little chat with Neville and decides it's better to make some confessions to Severus. Chapter notes. Edit by Trickster32. Hadrian woke up with something warm against his chest. At first, he was a little alert, but relaxed fast as he remembered who had joined him in the night. With a smile, he looked down at the still sleeping boy in his arms, putting his nose into the silver-blue hair, inhaling deeply. Severus smelled like an ocean during a stormy night, but also with a hint of lavender. However, Hadrian turned also bright red when he became more aware of their positions. Legs tangled into each other, while Severus laid half on top of him, head on Hadrian's chest, hips pressed against his own. Hadrian was sure would his hormones be more active, then it would be very awkward for him. It would definitely be better if Severus and he were officially a pair before their hormones came to life. Not that Hadrian planned to do anything before they would at least be in their 5th year, but for mates it didn't matter how old they were before they start courting. Lying in a bed together also wasn't very proper, but Hadrian enjoyed it too much already and wished they could just stay like this. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw movement next of Severus' bed and turned his head to meet the blue eyes of Neville, who turned also a little red to the sight of the two boys tangled up in one bed, but also gave him a little smile. It was clear as hell that Hadrian and Severus were destined for each other. Morning, whispered Neville, not wanting to wake up any of the others. It was still too early to get up for breakfast. How is he? He's fine. Crawled into my bed sometime in the night. I'm not sure why. Maybe still a little shaken up from the incident with the troll and needed comfort. Understandable. I wanted to thank you. You did great with knocking the troll out. You really don't have to. We might not know each other very long, but I think we became very good friends in the past 2 months. It's an honorable thing to protect your friends. Same for me. Still, you have my gratitude. Not everyone was much of a help there. Hadrian didn't need to mention who he meant, because Neville understood the hint by taking a glance at the bed on Hadrian's other side, where the redhead was still loudly snoring. Neville slowly and quietly stood up and went over to Hadrian's bed, sitting down at the edge. Did you tell your father what happened? Yes. I sent him a letter as soon as we were back. He also knows about my meeting with the headmaster and the Potters as well as anything else what happened. I also mentioned you. I think he will come for a visit. Somehow I have a feeling. Did you tell him what I am? Don't worry. He won't tell anyone outside the clan. And as a living vampire, I'm sure he noticed already when we first met that you aren't an ordinary wizard. I see. What about Draco? Do you trust him? Not completely, no. We have spoken, and he explained a few things and why he's so fixated on protecting Severus. I will trust that he will continue to do so because of his nature, but as long as his family is connected to you-know-who, I won't let him ever be alone with Severus outside of Hogwarts. A movement caught their eyes under the blanket, and both smiled when a little dragon head appeared, yawning widely. I can't still believe we have a dragon in Hogwarts, less a baby, which has claimed Severus as their mother. It's my fault. I subconscious sent Mark Severus, which you know. I can't still believe I haven't noticed to do that. You don't need to be ashamed of it. Don't forget that you're still a child, and even if you're behaving like a matured adult, your body is still that of a child. Even I have still problems to control my creature side time to time. I know, but I'm a little worried how Severus will react if he finds out. You shouldn't. I think this, Neville pointed at the smaller boy, is proof enough how much he trusts you and that he feels comfortable and safe. Maybe, but it's his instinct, not his conscious decision. Then talk to him. I know it had been just 2 months, but with each passing day, it will be more difficult for you to keep the truth from him. You don't have to go so far and propose to him, but explain him the nature of your creature, what he is to you, why you act like you act, and so on. You know it's in your right to ask for a courtship, as well as it's his right to accept or reject it. You both will have 7 years in Hogwarts to find out your true feelings for each other, despite what your instinct is already screaming at you. Severus might not speak much, often appear as he has no clue about normal things, like how to use a fork or some other simply things, which isn't much of a surprise if you consider where he lived most likely the past 11 years. But he's smart and able to process and adjust to new circumstances very fast. Trust that he won't reject you, just because you had no control of your natural instincts, but will listen and either ask for time to think about it or accept you and your offer straight away. Hadrian could only gape at Neville. Are you sure you're 11 yourself? It sounds as you have a lot of experience in this matter. You forget what I am. You have no idea what gossip's plans can be. I might have picked up a few things from them. I'm not sure if you are aware, but the castle is very fond of Severus and therefore likes to observe him, which includes you as well. I remember you mentioned Hogwarts having a connection to Severus, or at least that it was happy about his return. Hadn't just thought it could be more. To be honest, I can't tell you exactly what it is, only that there is something. The plants wouldn't speak about it, only saying that Severus was always a favorite child of Hogwarts. Because he respected the elves, plants, and took utmost care about things he may accidentally damaged or hurt. I see. He hadn't lost this attitude. No, he hasn't. Both were silent, watching Norbert nudging Severus' cheek and neck, trying different angles. Seems he wants his mother to wake up, snickered Neville, and Hadrian observed in fondness, not moving his body when Severus finally begun to stir. A hand came out from under the blanket and moved to the spot the baby dragon was pressing his snout against Severus' neck, half of the body covered from silver blue hair. The hand landed on the non-covered part, which startled the dragon, and with a small squeak, Norbert wiggled back out. Hadrian and Neville laughed quietly at the display. However, the movement the laughing caused in Hadrian's body didn't stay unnoticed, and Hadrian felt Severus' body tensing up. Neville took it as a clue to withdraw, though he kept one eye on the pair, curious how it will go. Severus felt something against his cheek, and shortly after his neck. It didn't startle him anymore as it did the first time the little dragon woke him up. By now, it was something like a morning ritual, and when he felt Norbert pressing his snout at another spot of his neck, Severus moved his hand to give the little baby dragon a sign that he was awake. It was like a game, because every time Norbert didn't see the hand coming, he startled at the light touch with a squeak following. While noticing it coming, he would pounce at it and lick one of the fingers. This morning, however, something strange happened. Suddenly, there was something moving under his head, and Severus also became aware that half of his body seemed to lay on something hard. Well, not really hard, but not as soft sheets either. Warmth radiated from it as well and felt so wonderful. His instincts told him he was safe, that he didn't have to be afraid, and slowly the tension left his body again. Severus slowly opened his eyes, blinking several times so his eyes could adjust to the light of the morning sun. Good morning, Severus. Emerald green eyes with a simmer of gold was the first he saw. When his vision finally cleared, and Severus could only stare for a moment before he slowly lifted himself up from the warm body. Now more aware of where he was, the tension returned. For him, it was natural to seek out the safest place or person in his vicinity whenever he had a nightmare or needed comfort. But he forgot that he wasn't at home with his family, and it wasn't Daenerys, his father, holding him. Severus? Morning, Hadrian. Please apologize, whispered Severus, looking unsure at the other boy. For whatever for, I invaded your space without asking. It's fine, Severus. May I ask what caused it? Sometimes I have nightmares and seek out my father or one of the others for comfort. But I'm not home, and I'm sorry. Severus wasn't ashamed of his confession. His father told him not to be, after having his first nightmare. Shoo, Severus. You can come to me whenever you need it. I don't mind. To be honest, it felt nice to have you in my arms. Hadrian flushed a little after saying it, and Severus wondered why Hadrian's cheeks turned red. Severus leaned forward and reached out with one hand, putting it on Hadrian's forehead, who turned even redder when he was only a couple inches away from Severus' chest. Severus? What are you doing? Your cheeks turned red suddenly, and I saw Madame Pomfrey doing this to find out if one of her patients had a fever. Severus didn't feel anything out of the ordinary, only the usually. Warmth Hadrian radiated, but the boy was still red, even more so when he finally leaned and returned his eyes back on the other's face. Maybe you should go to Madame Pomfrey, Hadrian. I can't feel something wrong, but your cheeks are red. Severus rose an eyebrow when Hadrian covered his face with both his hands while making some weird noises. Severus began to worry and prepared himself to leave so he could call someone for help, but a hand around his wrist stopped him. Hadrian couldn't do it. Neville was right. He couldn't keep his feelings for himself. Severus deserved an explanation. He felt Severus moving and peeked at the smaller boy, who just wanted to leave the bed, a worried expression on his face. Quickly, sure the boy wanted to call someone, Hadrian carefully grabbed Severus' right wrist and stopped him. Hadrian sighed. I'm fine, Severus, truly, but I think I owe you an explanation because I think from here on out it would be unfair not to say something, and I'm not a person who likes to be kept in the dark myself. So please would you just listen a few minutes and then think about what I have told you before making a decision? Hadrian not once removed his eyes from Severus, who didn't either, even if he tilted his head at the end, a light confusion in his eyes. However, Severus settled back, legs crossed while keeping Norbert occupied by letting him play with his fingers. Severus, I'm not angry that you came into my bed for comfort. As I said, I liked it very much. I wouldn't even mind if we do it again because you're my mate. Well, not only because you're my mate, but also because I like you and I have nothing against some cuddling. My own sister slept often in my bed because she needed the comfort while father was gone. Therefore, even if you weren't my mate, I'd still allow you to come to me. That's also the same should one of the others need it. I won't deny anyone the comfort if it's helping them, well, with some exceptions. Do you understand? Severus nodded, even if it was a little hesitant. Hadrian continued, however, you being my mate has a deeper meaning for me. Dragons have mates. It's someone they deeply care about, feel overly protective of, and would even die for. A dragon knows someone as they mate as soon as they see them or feel their magic close. In our case, I knew immediately as you entered the Great Hall the first night and set my eyes on you. I hadn't said anything yet, because for you everything seemed new, and I didn't want to overwhelm you with such a confession after barely meeting us the first time, especially because you didn't display any sign of recognizing me as your own mate. I know you're a creature, a death angel to be precise, because my father had spoken with your own when I told him about you. Your father spoke with mine? Funny thing, actually they know each other. But let's not get off topic. Hadrian inwardly sighed in relief when Severus nodded. He didn't know how to explain knowing who his father was. Well, as I said, not knowing about your reaction to my claim, I decided to wait. But with everything happened, I think it wouldn't wise or be fair to keep it, even if I needed a little kick from Neville, so to say. However, you being my mate doesn't mean you're my property or something. I'll never force you to do anything you don't want, even if you decide only to be friends in the future, which I hope we will be even after this conversation is over. And in case I wasn't clear or to prevent misunderstandings, a dragon's mate is something like their soulmate, partner for life. I don't want to pressure you into anything. I just want you to know all the facts. Again, Severus nodded, and so far it went well, at least in Hadrian's opinion before coming to the hard part. Severus, to make it short, I feel very protective in some way, also very possessive of you. I hate when you get hurt because I couldn't protect you. I don't like how some people look at you. But more important, despite everything, I like you. Even if you were my mate, I'd like to be your friend, to be someone you can lean on if needed. You know, same as you helped Hermione, as she needed someone to talk yesterday. At least, that's my guess why you were with her. Hermione was upset, and I wanted to help. She looked sad, therefore, I wanted to comfort her. Is this what a friend is doing? Yes. A friend is someone you trust, you like to be around, and who helps you without expecting something as reward. A mate is also a friend, but much more at the same time. It's truly difficult to explain. I think I understand. Hermione also said, you like me more as the others, and from what you're telling it makes kind of sense. You feel safe, and you let the cold inside me vanish when we're close. It feels good. I really like it. Severus gave him a smile, which Hadrian returned, even if his mind wondered what he meant with the cold inside him. It also brought a new kind of worry. Hadrian put that information aside for a later discussion, because there was another confession to make. Severus, there is something else. When a dragon find their mate, they usually claim them, mark them so anyone would know they are not free anymore. Well, not meant they were in prison or something, but more not free for another to claim them. You know what I mean? He got another nod. There are different ways of claiming someone. The most known is that they would have effects. Hadrian turned bright red again, but quickly continued. However, for young creatures, not being old enough for that kind of claim, there is also another method. It's called scent marking. Well, it means that the dominant partner would produce pheromones, which slowly would settle into the skin of the submissive partner. And, well, I might accidentally scent mark you during the past 2 months while we were in close proximity, meaning to be exact whenever I touched you. Oh, yeah, I'm truly sorry. It wasn't my intention to do so without your permission, I swear. I just became aware of myself when Norbert had decided you're his mother. He must have smelled that I was a dominant dragon and that my scent was all over you. Therefore, recognizing you as the submissive partner, who normally is also the bearer of any children and caretaker of them, Hadrian observed Severus closely. The smaller boy didn't said anything for a long while, watching and stroking little Norbert in his lap, who took another nap. When it didn't seem that Severus would say something, Hadrian blurted, "I am sorry, Severus. I know it's a lot, and it must be overwhelming at the moment, especially the last part, but I swear I mean no harm to you, and as I already said, you have a choice here. Me scent marking you doesn't mean we're bonded or something. I accept. If you don't want me in your proximity any longer, I'll respect your wish. My scent should vanish with only a little time passing. I won't force myself on you, never." "A what?" Hadrian stared wide-eyed at Severus, who still was observing the little dragon in his lap, before moving his head up. "I accept your claim, Hadrian. I may have been raised in solitude, by creatures I know are disliked, feared, seen as heartless, mindless and soulless beings, which all is wrong by the way, but I'm not stupid, as I know some are thinking because I'm not talking much or don't know some of the basics, like clothing myself correctly." Severus smiled at Hadrian, but it was full of sadness. "Maybe? So far as I know, his parents are friends with the Potters. Who knows what they had told him? It's also only him, because his older brothers aren't so clingy as he is. Actually, the twins are quite funny and often prank others. Nothing hurtful, though I made clear they let Severus and me out of it. Then there is Percy, prefect of Gryffindor, very stern, takes his job very serious, but stays also away unless one of us acts against the rules." "I see. Well, be careful and let me know if there are any other incidents. If something like the flying lesson happens again, I'll consider a restraining order, no matter if he is a child." Alukard stood up after giving the dragon a last pat on the head. From the corner of his eyes, he saw a blond boy standing a few meters away from them, pretending to speak with his friends. "I assume that's the other boy you mentioned?" Hadrian took a short glance in the direction his father had inclined his head and nodded. "Yes. Okay. I'll talk with the headmaster now. Show Juna the castle in the meanwhile. I'll catch up with you later in the hall. Shouldn't we come with you?" "No. It'll be easier to talk to the man without you around. Maybe I'll call for the 2 Potters to make a point, but it might be not necessary when I'm done telling the headmaster about the lack of protection." Hadrian nodded in understanding. He was sure his father won't swallow any excuses the headmaster might have. "Very well. Send me a quick message when you're done. Lunch will start in 1.5 hours. We'll be in the Great Hall then, but I think your talk will not be a short one." "Maybe. Severus, would it be okay if I talk about the headmaster about my offer, or do you prefer I only mention it if you have made a decision?" Severus stood silently next to Hadrian, having a staring contest with Juno when Alukard called his name. "Papa, can't you see we're busy?" "I can see it, little one, but staring at each other won't do anything good to your eyes." Alukard could already see the wetness in his daughter's eyes, whereas Severus seemed to have no problems. Alukard was sure the boy could stare for hours at someone without blinking. Just when he ended the thought, Juno blinked rapidly, muttering that Severus won, but she wanted a return match. The boy giggled, which let Hadrian smile. Alukard was happy to see his son smiling, and that Severus seemed fine. Before Alukard could repeat his question, the child turned to him, answering shyly. "As I said, I trust you, and I'd be honored if you take me as an apprentice. But I have to talk with my parent first, though." "That's fine. Daenerys is a good friend of mine. If you want, I can talk to him as well, and ask him for his permission." Severus thought about it for a moment, but didn't see a reason why not, so he nodded again. "Very well. See you later. Juna, stay with Hadrian. The castle is big, and I don't want you to get lost." "Yes, Papa." Alukard gave them a short wave as goodbye and made his way to the headmaster office. "Can we go to the Quidditch field?" asked Juna. "Sure. I think there will be some of our Gryffindor team members training. Tomorrow is the first match of the season." "Cool." Hadrian rolled his eyes, knowing his sister was a huge Quidditch fan. A visit from Alucard Tempest, Part 2. Chapter Summary. Alucard has a chat with Dumbledore. Lily is also there and not happy. Chapter Notes. Edit by Trickster32. Thank you all for your comments and Cody's. I hope you will like the chapter as well. Happy face. Alucard went up the stairs to the headmaster's office. He was excited. Meeting Severus was truly a nice pleasure. The boy was exactly how Harry has described him. Shy, but polite and truly brilliant. Watching him brew was a delight, and it filled him with pride that Severus accepted his offer. Alucard hadn't any doubt that Daenerys would allow Severus the opportunity to become an apprentice, no matter his age, and Alucard would see to it that no one will stand in the way, even the headmaster. He reached the door at the end, which was already open, and entered without hesitation. The headmaster was sitting behind his desk, listening to the woman Alucard had just the pleasure to meet, and whom he heard already miles before he stepped on the staircase. I forbid that someone enters my classroom without informing or asking me in beforehand. Albus. This man had the audacity to question my abilities in front of my class. I demand an apology. Furthermore, he even questioned how I got my mastery. You know very well how long it needed me to get the chance. And I worked hard for it. I won't let a stranger predicate. I didn't earn it. I apologize, Mrs. Evans, but as a potioneer myself, I was just very surprised how someone with a mastery isn't able to see how one of her students is clearly far beyond of what a first-year student is expected in the subject. As I said, Mr. Prince is a future potions master. It won't take him long to receive his mastery. Of course, only when there is no one restraining him. Alucard gave her no chance to response, instead focusing his attention on the other person. Headmaster Dumbledore. It's nice to meet you. Even if I wish there would be another reason for my visit. Unfortunately, I received a lot of letters from my son, stating about a few events which let me wonder if he's truly safe in the school. I assume you're Lord Alucard Tempest, Hadrian Peveril's adoptive father? Alucard could see how it finally clicked in the woman's head out of the corner of his eyes. Her eyes went big, before narrowing to an even more disdain expression. That's correct. I'm very proud of Hadrian, and he's faring well so far. However, as I said, I'm a little disturbed what had happened so far and how some teachers, Alucard glanced over to Lily for a brief second, are treating him or some of the other students. I'm not sure what you exactly mean. Do you mind to elaborate? Sure. Why don't we start with a three-headed dog being in Hogwarts? Or how it could be that a troll comes undetected into the castle? Or shall we talk about giving students detention in a dangerous forest, which is actually forbidden, regardless that an adult had been around? Maybe we speak about if some of your professors bullying a child just because they can. Dumbledore was stunned and needed a moment to come up with a response. But before he could answer, Lily jumped up from the chair after finally realizing who he was. You're the one who kidnapped my son. Took you very long to notice. But I refuse to be called a kidnapper. I found the boy alone lying in a basket in the middle of the night. He was freezing, and there wasn't anyone around. I put him on the front doors of my sister's home. He was meant to be with her, snarled Lily. And why didn't you give your son to her directly instead of letting him behind outside without making sure that your sister would take him? Snarled Alucard back. I did what any responsible person would have done and saved the boy from freezing to death. And it was his luck that he never had to live with you or your sister's family. We are fully aware of what may have happened to Hadrian, because it was me who placed a golem in his stead to prevent any of you to find out. Lily paled and Alucard studied Dumbledore's reaction, but he didn't see anything what would hint of the old man knowing. But it could just be because Hadrian already told them. Lily's reaction just meant that she and most likely her husband didn't believe Hadrian and thought it was all a made-up. Regardless, Dumbledore's non-reaction to it could mean anything from disappointment that the Potters were so dumb not to make sure the boy would live with those muggles, or to be shocked that his former students would allow their son to live in such hateful environment. How can we know that what you're saying is true? You could have used spells to let my sister seen as a magic-hating bitch, just to make sure that Harry would stay with you and not return to us. Alucard snorted. Even if I'd have done something like this, it wouldn't change the fact that you did nothing to convince Hadrian to be your long-lost missing love child. However, it wasn't necessary to convince him of anything. Hadrian is fully aware of what you did before the whole Dark Lord attack happened. He might have been young, and would he be a mere child, and not a creature he would dead or not know. But thanks to his dragon nature, Hadrian remembers very well. It was an accident. defended Lily, but Alucard smelled the lie miles away. I'm sure everything is a slight misunderstanding. I know James and Lily since they entered Hogwarts for the first time, Mr. Tempest. I can't imagine they would have harmed Hadrian with purpose. Not can I believe that Lily would have allowed Harry to be hurt by her sister. Your eyes are blind, Headmaster. Alucard restrained himself to accuse him of being something of a puppet master. Better to just pretend to have an old wizard in front of him who refused to see the truth even if it's thrown into his face. Regardless, I'm not here to discuss the past. Except that Hadrian is my son, and I expect he's treated as any other child fairly. If there is an issue with him being a creature, then let me know, and I'll listen to your complaints. So far, I didn't receive any letters that he hurt anyone. If you have a general issue with teaching him, then I can find easily someone else to teach him, or do it myself. Which honestly I'm already considering. Are you implying that my staff isn't capable of teaching? Asked Dumbledore, bewildered. Alucard got the impression the man truly was blind. Headmaster, what my son wrote me the past 2 months, let me think that yes, he might not get the education which I'm expecting he would get at a school like Hogwarts. And wouldn't he haven't insisted to go to Hogwarts, I most likely would have sent him to Durmstrang or kept him at home, letting members of my clan teaching him. Your school is lacking a lot of important classes, and it's no wonder that purebloods are reacting poorly of muggleborns. Nonsense. Purebloods are hating us muggleborns, and yet you're married to one. Let me ask you, how many traditions of the magical world is your family practicing? What do you know about magical creatures like Hadrian and me, and about the peace treaty we signed a long time ago? Hadrian told about the ghost teaching magical history, and that he heard older students saying that the only thing they are learning in this class is about the Goblin Wars. Honestly, it's no wonder that there are so many pure-blood families aren't pleased with muggleborns or half-bloods raised in the muggle way. You're just another Death Eater, aren't you? Another of Voldemort's followers who want to destroy. Lily stopped and found herself in the air, a hand around her throat. You better think before you speak, woman. You better not put me on one level with someone like that scum of a maniac wizard. You just proved how little you know about my kind. Don't think we are something like werewolves, which can easily be hunted down, or some creatures, hold as pets or slaves. Lily gasped for air and almost lost conscious when Alucard finally let go of her. That the headmaster hadn't interfered shows me that at least he hasn't forgotten who is on the top of the food chain. Lily glanced over to Dumbledore, who indeed hadn't made any move to help her, and she could see it in his eyes, the slight glimmer of fear. Now, to come back why I'm here. First, I want an explanation of my prior questions, starting with a three-headed dog held in a room far too small for him. Alucard returned to his place and sat down in one of the chairs, ignoring the stare of Lily. Dumbledore, too, sat down while thinking over what to respond. Well, I was asked to keep something safe for an old friend of mine, and Fluffy is kind of guarding it. I fear I can't tell you much more without breaking my oath. Alucard raised an eyebrow while Dumbledore continued. I told the student at the welcoming feast that the third floor was closed off and not allowed for them to enter. So you see me surprised to hear that your son seemed to have broken a rule and went to the floor nonetheless. Alucard scoffed. Headmaster, don't try to manipulate me in thinking it was Hadrian's own fault. He might have broken a rule, which wasn't on purpose as he told me. But even then, we're talking about children. You can't tell children, especially teenagers, there is something forbidden without giving them a reasonable explanation of why it's forbidden. Children are curious, and teenagers tend to break the rules. Telling them they could die might stop a few to sneak around, but it will encourage others to try even more. It'd have been easier to just say, the floor is closed off because of renovations, and let some elves do a few changes, so no one would suspect anything. Dumbledore nodded slowly. You're right. Oh, do you want some tea or anything? I have also some lemon drops. No, thank you. I'd like to know about the troll. I fear that's Professor Quirrell's fault. I mean, he didn't do it on purpose, but he admitted that the troll he held in the dungeons for his data class managed to break up the chains and escaped. And why exactly didn't he just stun the troll or use some other spells to capture it again? As data professor, he should be more as capable to do it instead of running into the Great Hall and causing the students to panic. True. But I think he just thought to inform anyone so we could get the students to safety. He fainted. Deadpanned Alucard. Albus cleared his throat. Honestly, I'm not sure myself why he was so overwhelmed. I can only assume that he wasn't as prepared as he claimed to be when accepting the position as Dada Professor. The position is known to be cursed since you know who was denied it. It's not easy to find a new professor each year, but I doubt it has anything to do with a curse because I couldn't find anything. It's just bad luck. I wouldn't call it bad luck when you have to search each year for a new professor. But it doesn't matter. Alukard waved a hand. I just wanted to hear your explanation of some parts. As you might already figure, I'm not very impressed. It's not even 3 months since my son started school, and he faced already more dangerous situations as he'd been in my care. And that's meaning something. So you must excuse me for worrying about his well-being. In addition, a friend of mine is also worried about his little son and asked me to keep an eye on him as well. I'm sad to hear that you don't trust us protecting the children. Alukard almost laughed at that. You don't give me any reason to do so. My son told me about another student who's endangering others more often than not. I even witnessed it myself in class today, where said student tried to sabotage another one's potion. Hadn't I stopped it, then there would be some students in the infirmary with heavy burning now. It might have even killed someone. And this woman here has nothing better to do as to scold another student who was brewing a perfect potion, giving him detention for endangering the class. Although he wasn't doing anything like that while ignoring anything else around her. And you're wondering why I don't trust you or your staff. Is that true, Lily? TSK. The boy is ignoring anything I'm saying. He isn't following any of my instructions. Of course, I'd give him detention. He's a first year, and still you're ignoring what I just said about the other student, who truly was endangering others while your only focus is on the boy far beyond like others in his age. As I said, he's brilliant, and it's another reason why I wanted to speak with you, Headmaster. I want Mr. Prince as my apprentice. I just asked him if he'd be interested and accepted my offer. Albus' eyes widen in shock. But he's 11. To become an apprentice, he needs his OWLs and newts. Not necessarily. There are exceptions, even if very rare. Hadrian sent me some of Severus' potions, and also what the boy have done differently to the instructions given. To say I was impressed would be an understatement. There is no doubt Mr. Prince has the potential of becoming one of the best potioneers. Alukard could hear how Lily gritted her teeth. That reminds me of another talented young man. His name was Severus Snape. He got his mastery with 20 and was declared the youngest potions master. Too bad he joined the Dark Lord. Dumbledore sighed, and Alukard observed him closely. He'd see sorrow, disappointment, anger, but there was something else which Alukard couldn't quite put a finger on it. I heard about him. It's truly a tragedy to lose such talent. Lily scoffed next to him, but hold her tongue for once. Regardless, Severus accepting my offer means I'd take over his potion lessons. It won't happen until next term starting, though. There are some things I would take care about in the meanwhile. You must excuse me, Mr. Tempest, but for allowing you to take Mr. Prince as an apprentice, you need the permissions of the boy's parent, and I have to ask the board as well. And we have the rule that no student is allowed to leave Hogwarts during the school term, with exception of vacation and the Hogsmeade weekends, which only students in third and upper years can visit with a few professors as guardians. On the other side, I can't allow an adult to live in Hogwarts when he isn't part of my staff. Parents might complain and worry about their children. Don't worry, I'll contact the board myself. I'm sure we'll find a solution which everyone will be happy with. I have a little daughter to consider as well, so the easiest way would be becoming a part-time professor. Even full-time wouldn't be a problem. I'm sure I can come to an agreement with the board. May I ask what you exactly have in mind? Well, there are a lot of possibilities. I can take over the position of the history professor. I don't think Professor Binns will let you. He successfully scared anyone away who wanted to take over. Headmaster, I'm not a mere wizard. I'm a living vampire. Yes, of course. I don't think you'd have any problems to handle a ghost. No, there wouldn't be. However, there would also be the option to become a part-time professor for these who are struggling with some of their classes. I have several masteries to be capable of teaching them in different subjects, if needed. Alukard looked over to Lily meaningful. This time, she couldn't hold back. Albus, why are you allowing him to insult me? I can't remember of saying anything what could mean as an insult. I just listed facts, and for me, helping some struggling students isn't an insult. Some students need more help than others in some subjects. One can be brilliant in charms, but bad in transfiguration. I'm not sure how Mr. Prince is faring in other subjects, but so far Hadrian told me he was fine. He seems to have a talent in data as well. I'll look into it when it's settled that he will be my apprentice. I see. Oh, and Severus might not be the only one who might get an offer of an apprenticeship. Just that you know. And who would be the other one? I'm not telling you yet. It also wouldn't be me taking the other student as a second apprentice, but someone else. I don't even know yet if said student would accept the offer or if their parents would. I just wanted to let you know that there isn't any favoritism in place. As I said, it's rare for someone like Mr. Prince to have such talent and to be recognized in such earlier state. Wouldn't it be for my son, Mr. Prince might have lost confidence in his work, constantly being scolded for not following instructions. He's a first year, protested Lily. Stop saying he's a first year. That's not an excuse. As I already said to you, as a potions mistress, you should have recognized his talent immediately. It'd even have been your task to inform the potion guild of such a talent. There aren't many potioneers, even less with a talent like he has, and I fear how many slipped through your fingers who could have been formidable potioneers, but lost interest in it just because of you, snarled Alukard. Lily reared back, but then jumped from her seat and stomped out of the office. I apologize, headmaster, but I don't like people who aren't able to admit their failures. Regardless, I think we're finished. You answer my questions, and I'll let you know about my plan to take Mr. Prince's apprentice. You may think about what I said, and you truly should consider reinstalling some of the classes. I can't see why a class like magical politics has been removed, and you should think about letting someone teach the magical traditions and etiquette to those raised by muggles before they even enter the magical world. You would be surprised how pure bloods might see them when proper introductions are made. It's a lot to think about indeed. May I ask how long you will be here? I heard there is a Quidditch match tomorrow. My daughter likes Quidditch as much as her brother does. I think we will stay and watch, and then going back home after. I see. If you don't mind, I'll join my children and stay until dinner is over. It's no issue. You can eat with us in the Great Hall. It may be rare, but you aren't the first parent visiting the school. Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you. See you later. Until later. Alukard left with a little smirk on his lips. This went better than he thought. A visit from Alukard Tempest. Part 3. Chapter Summary. We learned something about the Peace Treaty. Chapter Notes. Edit by Trickster32. How was it? Asked Hadrian his dad, as soon as Alukard joined them in the Great Hall, where lunch would soon start. There weren't many students yet, but those present were far enough away not to be able to eavesdrop. Let us say, I reminded the headmaster and especially your potions professor, who was also there, who's the head of the food chain. She's a very annoying person, full of herself, and can't see her own wrongdoings. I see. Did you mention the apprenticeship? Yes. It won't be much of a problem. We just have to do some scheduling as soon as Severus' father gives his agreement. It won't start before next term, though. I'll also speak with the school board about the possibilities taking a teaching position. It'd allow me and Juna to live in Hogwarts. Would I become a full-time or just a part-time professor? Really? Which class would you teaching? History. The headmaster mentioned that the ghost currently teaching it scared off any volunteers, but I assured him that this wouldn't be a problem. Living vampire, after all. Hadrian snickered, right? Would be great to learn something else besides Goblin Wars. I know it's important, but truly I can't imagine to hear all of it again and again for 7 years. And it'll be much more interesting when you're the professor. Thanks, grinned Alukard. Daddy, we truly will live in Hogwarts. We just have to wait after everything is settled, darling. But, yes, we will. Yeah. Did you hear that, Sebi? We can see each other every day then. Juna bounced in Severus' lap, grinning up widely at him. As soon as Alukard had been gone, Juna attached herself to Severus and didn't leave once his side. His mate didn't seem to mind, so Hadrian let her. Severus nodded and returned the smile, having an arm around Juna's waist, so she wouldn't fall down. But he looked back at Alukard, a question popping up in his mind. Sir, are you really sure about me? I mean taking me on as an apprentice? Severus' voice went lower with each word, and he was ducking his head. Maybe some hidden insecurities from his former life? Thought Alukard, exchanging a glance with Hadrian, who put an arm around Severus. Call me Alukard, Severus, at least if we are in private. As my sons make you practically family, so no need for the sir, all right? And don't worry. As I said, I saw your work and also observe you working. It'll be my pleasure and honor to become your teacher." Both could see the tension leaving Severus' body. The boy may have more self-esteem issues than he's letting on. Probably a longer chat with Daenerys is in order. The boy lived with Dementors since being reborn, and he might have had a good childhood besides growing up in Azkaban. He wasn't a prisoner, though, and Daenerys would have made sure the boy get everything he needed, even if having no chance of meeting other children his age or communicating with sane adults. However, it doesn't change the fact who Severus Sephiroth Prince truly was or had been. His memories might be lost or come up with time, depending on which Lady Magic had decided, but it still doesn't change the damage on Severus' soul with all things the boy had suffered in his previous life. Too bad his parents were dead already, or Alukard might have made a visit to the Muggle world. Their disappearance would be easy to cover up. After all, accidents happened anytime. Fine, Alukard. Severus flushed slightly, but there was also a little smile when the boy leaned more into Hadrian's side. Alukard was happy that his son decided to be honest to Severus and talking with him about their status. It'd prevent someone taking negative advantage of it by finding out and trying to manipulate the little death angel that his or Hadrian's attraction to each other may be a lie. "How long are you staying?" asked Hadrian after a minute of silence. "Until tomorrow. I promised Juna we would stay and watch the Quidditch match." "Where will you stay?" "In Hogsmeade. I'll meeting with Hollerforth as well. You'll come with us tomorrow and meet Mr. Longbottom." "Oh, he's a herbologist, right?" "Yes. I already informed him about your friend, and he's eager to meet him. I let him know that we would be at Hogwarts this weekend, and he decided to come around and make his own proposal. I already mentioned it to the headmaster that there might be another one interested to take one of his students as apprentice, but I didn't say who. Neville will surely accept. He loves plants and is excellent in the subject." "Indeed. May I ask you something?" asked Severus shyly. "Whatever you want. What do you want to know? Could you please tell me something about this peace treaty between creatures and Wixen? I mean, Hadrian mentioned it, but I was wondering, why doesn't it apply to all creatures? Didn't the goblins sign it? Who exactly did sign it?" The rapid of questions caught Alucard a little off guard, but he was pleased with the interest Severus was showing. Alucard noticed that many more were now listening, even some professors on the head table. The Great Hall was silent, which Alucard used as advantage. The peace treaty had been signed a long time ago, centuries before even Hogwarts was built. The reason for the peace treaty was an act of desperation. Not from our side, I may remark, but from Wixen realizing that they weren't on top of the food chain after committing the worst crime they could have ever done. The children were staring at Alucard, enthralled in his telling, despite Hadrian already knowing about it, and who unconscious tightened his grip around Severus. "You have to know that Lady Magic is loving all magical beings, but there is one being in special, which is her favorite. But let us begin at the start. As an entity, Lady Magic needs helpers anchored to the real world. Her first creations were the boulders, the ground foundation to bring magic into the world. When enough magic was there, other creatures followed, living vampires, dragon shifters like Hadrian, Dementors, and many more. Then came the Wixen. But as it is and ever will be, among them all were those striving for more, no matter what it is, knowledge, power, the need to be superior to others or just to destroy what is different. Even among living vampires, wasn't everything peaceful as you might think. But without darkness, there cannot be light, and vice versa. But both need balance. Too much darkness and the world sinks into despair and destruction. Too much light and the world ends in stagnation and a slow death. Take some spells or potions as example. Even the darkest spells can be used to help, even the killing curse. It had been created to cause a quick and painless death, be it on a hunt to prevent injuries or to stop the suffering of someone slowly dying. But even the lightest of spells can be used to cause harm. Take Alohomora. The spell doesn't do much as opening locked doors, but what if behind the door is something very dangerous? What being set free can cause harm and destruction. Do you understand where I'm going? They nodded. So keeping the balance is very important. However, it's also important to let children grow up and not to interfere all the time, but to let them learn from their own mistakes. The balance can't be easily broken, even if there are times where it's leaning slightly more to one side as to the other. It's natural. Still, there are rules never to be broken, and as it was Wixen who broke it. Hunting, as I said, is something natural, But there was one creature in special never to be hunted. A treasure sent by Lady Magic. A creature able to bring light into the dark. Or darkness into the light. What was it? Asked a second-year-old girl from Ravenclaw. A death angel. There are unique, and there is ever only one, and only sin when the balance is close to be destroyed. The Death Angel had been sent to us centuries before Wixen appeared, and it was the fight among us older creatures, which almost destroyed the balance. We were as much as children at this time as Wixen are today. However, the Death Angel brought us together. We learned and balance was restored. A long time we lived in quite harmony, despite the minor fights. Those who went against Lady Magic were executed, while others protected the creatures close to extinction or which came in need of help. What happened to the Death Angel? Why we never heard about it? Asked a confused older boy from Hufflepuff. To answer your first question, Wixen killed the Death Angel. At the beginning, us older creatures taught the younger. We taught them about magic, helped them to grow as parents, are teaching their children until it was time for us to retreat to the background and watch. But with each generation, they forgot about the older, about the rules, declaring them as legends and nothing more. They started to hunt the younger creatures for ingredients or starting to hold them as pets. The more dangerous creatures, they even hunted out of fun, not caring about the consequences until they began to think the world would be better without creatures. And one day, the oldest of us found out that Wixen managed to capture the Death Angel. It had been a trap. Betrayed by a Wixen they thought to be a friend. They tortured them, cut open, and sold pieces. When we found them, the Death Angel was already dead. And it was then that we decided to teach the Wixen a lesson. We started our own hunt. Alucard's scarlet eyes begun to glow eerily, and it let everyone shiver. Not even a month later, a peace treaty was signed between the Wixen and the oldest of creatures, dragon shifters, living vampires, high elves, lycanthropes, which aren't like the werewolves you know. But what about the goblins? Didn't they sign the treaty as well? No. This peace treaty was between Wixen and those older creatures. Goblins may be older than Wixen, but don't count as one of the oldest. They are one of the third generation of creatures if you want. I don't really understand. Why does the treaty count for all Wixen, but not for all creatures? Frowned another girl, this time from Slytherin. Simply because the treason and crime had been against one of the most sacred creatures, and therefore involved the oldest creatures. We don't speak for all creatures. For example, Hogwarts has 4 houses, right? The students nodded. Good. The professors are the oldest with the headmaster or headmistress as their precious leader. Now, they are teaching, watching, and guiding you. They teach you the rules, such as example, never disrespect your older, never touch the headmaster or headmistress, which is the highest rule, and all the other minor rules Hogwarts has, yes? Another nod. So now, all 4 houses respect the rules, but with weeks passing and with no reminder of the rules, the children forget. One house begins to think they are better than anyone else is. They start to bully students from other houses. But so far, they don't go against the rules the professors have set, who are watching and waiting for the children to settle their conflicts down themselves. But with time, it gets worse. But there is no rule which says that one house can't go against another, so the conflict continues. But then, the house decides to do something bold. They think the professors doing nothing means they aren't as strong as they may be. Therefore, they trap and capture the headmaster or headmistress and kill them. Everything glanced at the head table, where now Dumbledore was also sitting in his throne-like chair with a neutral face. But the students forgot the rule never to touch the most important person to the professors, whom decided it was time to show these students that going against a rule has consequences, and in this case the verdict was death, for them all. Eyes went wide in horror. The professors start with the actual culprits first, killing them in the same way they killed their precious headmaster, but much more painful and for all to see. A warning and reminder for those of the other houses as well. Then follow those who bullied students of other houses. When more as half of them are deaf, the rest finally realizes that they have no chance, that the professors killed already the strongest among them with no effort at all, and that when they want to survive, they have to plead for mercy. So they send a representative who is begging and pleading for mercy, promising to never again breaking the rules. The professors were, of course, skeptical, but they remembered how much Lady Magic and their precious headmaster or headmistress loved all of the 4 houses, So they sign a peace treaty between them, which when broken will result in the death of said house without a chance of another mercy. Oh, I think I understand. The other three houses weren't involved in breaking this particular rule. Therefore, they weren't involved in the peace treaty as well, right? Concluded Neville, who was now sitting across from them, Seamus and Dean beside him. Exactly. Time passed, and the house begun again to turn their attention to other houses. With one, they ended in war, which they barely won. Then they started to create rules to restrict the other houses as well, while in same time fighting among themselves. However, they never again dared to break a rule made by the professors, which were waiting for a new headmaster/headmistress to be sent by Lady Magic, because the balance started to shift, which meant a new headmaster/headmistress would be needed soon. But why don't they interfere? Why waiting? Asked Hermione. Because it was the wish of Lady Magic that her children make their own decisions. They own mistakes from which they hopefully will learn. The professors were children too, made also mistakes which caused a lot of destruction. But they grew up, learned from their mistakes with help of the headmaster/headmistress, and were now teaching the youngest, giving them ground rules to follow, but not interfering too much to stop their own development. I see. And when one of the students of the houses seek refuge among the professors, and they grant them their protection, they automatically fall under the peace treaty. Exactly. Very good, Ms. Granger. Hermione Granger. Hermione leaned over for a handshake with a slight red face. Ah, my pleasure, Ms. Granger. And you are? Heir. Neville Longbottom. Seamus Finnegan. Dean Thomas, sir. Alukard let his gaze wander over some other students, including those of other houses. His eyes even met this of the blonde boy, sitting behind Severus. Heir Draco Lucius Malfoy. Draco gave a slight bow in respect, which Alucard returned. My pleasure. I'm Lord Alucard Tempest, Hadrian's father. Now, Severus. Did I answer your questions? Did my father sign it? Frowned Severus. No, because they are the executioners of Lady Magic, whispered Alucard in his ear, when pretending to be focused on the little dragon peeking out of Severus' scarf. I see. I have one question. May I? Alucard turned to one of the Weasley twins. Sure, Mr. Fred Weasley. Both twins gaped in shock. Never had anyone found out who was who, not even their mother. Alucard snickered and pointed at his nose, which caused both scowling at Hadrian, who snickered into his hand. Saw the But wouldn't it be for your unique scent? I wouldn't be able to know who is who, but each person, no matter what, has his own scent. You could have told us, you know. Yeah. We could have stated to research for something to change or mask our scent. Now both pouted, but Hadrian just laughed. Alucard cleared his throat. Well, I think you wanted to ask me something. He smiled at Fred, who reared a little back, but then nodded. Yeah, heir. I was wondering, didn't any of them break any rule? I mean, there were other rules as well. I can't imagine no one tried or actually broke one. Ah, yes. Of course, there were those breaking some of the minor rules. Breaking those rules means to face the executioner of Lady Magic. Executioners. Dementors. Everyone paled. A visit from Alucard Tempest, Part 4. Chapter Notes. Edit by Trickster32. Happy Easter. Everyone rabbit-face egg. Have fun with the new chapter. Hey, did you hear? Our seeker got sick this morning, yelled Seamus, running into their bedchamber, where Hadrian and the others were just finishing their morning routine. What? No way, exclaimed Ron. It was Saturday, and not long after breakfast, the Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Slytherin would start. What's the matter? We have a substitute, said Hadrian with a shrug. Yeah, but Darren isn't as good as Heather, commented Seamus. Hadrian shrugged again, while helping Severus with his robe, while adding, he can't be very bad or he wouldn't have made it into the team. From what I understood, Oliver would. The team captain was very strict from whom he chose. Indeed. Agreed Neville, seeming also unconcerned. Guys, against Slytherin we need the best. Don't you want our house winning? Whined Ron. Sure we want that. But there isn't much we can do, except cross our fingers and cheer our team on. Maybe they should have made an exception and should have asked you into the team. You're an amazing flyer, and I'm sure you'd be a great seeker. No thanks. I might love to fly, alone due to my dragon nature, but I'm not very interested to join the Quidditch team. But it's the best thing. How could someone not want to be a member? I'll definitely participate in the next tryout. Not everyone loves Quidditch as much as you do. My priorities are laying on my education, of course in protecting my mate, and not to play around. Hadrian wrapped an arm around Severus' waist, making his point clear. Severus blushed a little, but didn't withdraw, instead leaning more into Hadrian. Ron wrinkled his nose, still disgusted by the display of this kind of attraction. Worst, he even woke up one night and noticed the silver-haired boy lying in Harry's bed, cuddled into his side. He had gone to McGonagall the next morning, who had called the two boys into her office. Ron hoped Severus would be punished or, better yet, be banished from their shared room. But to his frustration, nothing happened, except that he received a very nasty glare from Harry while Severus seemed ashamed. Regardless, it didn't stop the smaller boy to sneak into Harry's bed, and Ron had a hard time not to comment whenever it happened. It was bad enough to witness Harry fuzzing around the boy, or like now, when Harry wrapped an arm around the smaller boy, which wasn't just a gesture between friends, but that of lovers, even if they were still too young to be just that. However, Ron seemed to be the only one having a problem with it, so he tried to keep his mouth shut. He was still hoping to become Harry's best friend, but no matter what he was trying, Harry kept him on distance. There was nothing for Ron to do as to stay close and pretending to be one of Harry's friends. Come on, guys. Let us have breakfast and heading to the Quidditch field. Hadrian, will your father be there? Yes. He and my sister will wait for us outside of Hogwarts entrance, which leads to the Quidditch field. Before I forget, Neville, there will be someone with him who would like to meet you. It's nothing bad, don't worry, rather the opposite. Okay. Neville looked a little unsure, but trusted Hadrian. They left their dormitory and went downstairs, where Hermione was already waiting for them. Morning. The twins are already gone, as is the rest of team. Morning, Hermione. I bet that would drag them outside as soon as breakfast had started. A bet easily won. He did indeed, snickered Hermione. But what took you so long today? Normally you, Severus and Neville are the first down here. Hermione. Yesterday was more exhausting than expected. Cause of your little sister? She's a cutie, but seems to be a very active child. She is, isn't she? And yes, she can be really active, but it wasn't just because of her. Little Norbert often interrupts her slumber, or at least that of Severus. Therefore, I think it was just to be expected for his body to demand more rest after a day like yesterday. It wasn't the whole truth, but Hadrian couldn't tell what the true reason was for Severus to sleep so long. Oh, does he normally do it then? Yeah, at least once per night being hungry, which is perfectly normal. Severus always has something in a bowl for him, but Norbert rarely keeps quiet enough not to wake him up, or me. At least he keeps from moving or flying around. I see. I never noticed, said Neville while the other three nodded at his comment, looking as they heard about it the first time as well. See? Severus taught him the first week to stay silent enough so that he will not waken you guys up. He's truly a great mother. Severus flushed and ducked into Hadrian's side with a whispered Hadrian. Can't argue it. He's right, Severus. There may have been some small accidents, but nothing what caused major injuries, and not once Norbert disturbed any of the classes. Hadrian heard Ron something muttering under his breath, but ignored it, very well knowing that the boy wasn't agreeing to the point of small accidents. Norbert more as once lit up his clothes when he accidentally produced a fireball. Not that he didn't deserve it. Dragons have a sense for people not liking them, or for what they consider theirs. And it was obviously that Ron didn't like Severus, even if he managed to hold his opinion back lately. Severus petted the small head peeking out from the place under the boy's chin and where he was cuddled into the thick scarf. They could hear a low purr, which caused everyone to smile, well except Ron, who wasn't close enough to hear it. Well, let us go, said Hadrian. Hadrian, Severus. We're here. Both turned to the excited girl, sitting in Alucard's arms, waving at them. Next to him stood another man, smiling. Hadrian motioned for Dean, Seamus, and Ron to go, which the former two did, joining another group while Ron ignored it and followed them. Hadrian rolled his eyes. Ron, go with the others. Why? I want to know your father, and you didn't send Hermione and Neville away. And you can't order me around. Ron crossed his arms with a huff, staring at Hadrian determined, but soon buckled and left when Hadrian stared right back at him in displeasure. Idiot, muttered Hermione. Agreed, nodded Neville. both following Hadrian to his father. "Morning, Dad Juna." "Good morning. My pleasure to meet you again, Miss Granger, Mr. Longbottom." "Please, you can call me Hermione, Mr. Tempest. And please call me Neville." Alucard titled his head slightly. "The man next to me is Master Hollerforth Hampshire, an expert and very famous herbologist." Neville inhaled sharply, knowing very well who the man was. "And Mr. Hampshire, it's an honor to meet you. I have read all of your books. By Lady Magic, I can't believe I'm standing in front of—" The last sentence ended in a quiet mumble. Neither could understand, but Mr. Hampshire was more amused as exasperated about the display. Hadrian liked him. "Nice to meet you, Master Hampshire." Hadrian extended his hand, and the two shook hands. Hermione also greeted the man politely, while Severus only whispered a greeting, half hiding behind Hadrian. My pleasure to meet you as well, Mr. Prince. My friend told me about your talent with potions." The man smiled, and Severus returned it, but stayed close to Hadrian. He couldn't sense any danger from the man, but Severus was shy and the man a stranger even to Hadrian, so he was also cautious. Hampshire turned to Neville, who looked embarrassed. "Mr. Longbottom, I heard some interesting news about a very talented first-year student in Hogwarts, Alucard." The man pointed next to him, "Very much insisted I meet with you. Would it be quite all right if we talk a little? Either now or after the match will be fine. The choice is yours. It'll be just some short questions as well." Neville's eyes widened in shock, and Hadrian thought he would faint, but Neville only nodded, which caused a raised eyebrow from Mr. Hampshire. Neville saw it and quickly shook his head to banish the confusion. "Now we'll be fine. There is still a little time before the match starts, and even then, I'm not much of a fan, so should we miss the start, it's fine with me as well. Sir." "I see. I'm not much of a fan myself, but sometimes it's good to distract the mind with something else. However, we can still sit with the others. I can easily perform a privacy charm, so no one can hear us while at the same time we won't be disturbed by others talking. Would maybe for the best if we don't want anyone suspicious about me alone with a student," snickered the herbologist. Sure. That's fine by me." "Great. Shall we then?" The master turned to Alucard, who motioned for Hadrian to lead the way. Not long after, they were seated in one of the higher stands. Juna placed herself into Severus' lap, who sat between Alucard and Hadrian, with Hermione next to the dragon shifter and the other two on Alucard's other side. Hadrian was relieved to have a break from Ron, who stood with the other Gryffindors on the lower stand, seeming to have forgotten them in his excitement. The crowd cheered when the teams flew in and around the pitch one after another, and the game was on. "I must say, I'm not very impressed by the Seekers. The snitch passed them quite often by now, but neither of them noticed it," stated Alucard after 2 hours into the game. "Yeah, even now, it's basically direct under the nose of the Slytherin," replied Hadrian. "You can see it?" asked Hermione, a little amazed, who concentrated on the Seeker Hadrian just mentioned, but couldn't see anything due to the distance. The Seeker was, after all, on the other side of the field. "We have good eyes, so it's not very difficult to follow the golden ball, but I'd assumed that even a Wixen in just close proximity would have noticed it yet." "Maybe he had, but tries not to alarm the opponent. The Gryffindor Seeker is close. Slytherins are known to be cunning, while Gryffindors, are more direct in their approach," deadpanned Hadrian, when the Gryffindor Seeker jumped into action as soon as he detected his target. Of course, the Slytherin Seeker reacted in an instant, and both were now chasing after the snitch, but lost it after not even a minute by trying to push each other from their brooms. "That was close," muttered Hermione, when one of the two Bludgers almost knocked wood from his broom. "He's a good keeper, but seems a little arrogant," stated Alucard. "He's determined to win the Quidditch Cup. From what I heard, you can think he's possessed or something," replied Neville, who had finished his talk with Hampshire, looking very proud and excited. When he saw the master laughing after Neville nodded like there was no morning, Hadrian knew he had accepted, not that he ever expected Neville to decline the offer. The man himself looked also satisfied after confirming that Alucard hasn't exaggerated. It doesn't matter that Neville is a dryad. Sure, it might give him an advantage with handling plants, but that doesn't mean that he has automatically a talent to be a herbologist. "Oh, look!" Juna pointed at the 3 chasers from Gryffindor heading straight to the 3 goals protected by the Slytherin keeper. Unfortunately, it caused neither of them seeing the Bludger coming in their direction. It was just pure instinct what let Hadrian and Alucard react. While the former threw himself over Severus and Juna, the latter jumped in front of them, one hand outstretched and stopping the bludger midair, just a few inches away. The people who have realized what almost happened inhaled sharply, but sighed in relief when Alucard pushed the bludger back on the field. Another reason why I'm not very fond of this game, muttered Hemshire, who relaxed back into his seat, having himself put in front of Neville, even if the ball hadn't aimed at the boy. Indeed. I'm not sure, but shouldn't there some protecting shields around the stands? Asked Alucard with a frown in direction of the stand where the professors were seated. He couldn't see the headmaster, though. Then his gaze landed on a professor with a turban, and Alucard narrowed his eyes. That must be the Dada professor Hadrian mentioned. There was indeed something off with the person, a dark aura surrounding the man. If it was true that there was some connection to the dark magic still in severe scar on the back, and this man, well, it means nothing good. Flashback. They were in the boys' dormitory. It was still afternoon, and most students were either in class, in the library, or hanging out somewhere else. Alucard ignored the fact that he wasn't actually allowed to enter one of the houses, less the dormitories, but what he wanted, needed privacy. Hadrian knew of his plan and led them back to the rooms. Severus was a little unsure why they headed to their dormitory, but didn't ask. No one stopped them, not aware that the boys weren't alone. Alucard had masked his and Juna's presence as soon as they were alone in the hall. The students and professors would just think they left or were somewhere else in the castle or outside of it. When they entered the room, Alucard closed the door and made sure to put an alarm around the door should someone come in close. It was easy to hide, but difficult to explain why the room would be locked for one student sleeping in it. Severus got more nervous, and Alucard kneeled down in front of him. Severus, I know it seems very impudent, especially because we just know us for a few hours, but would you allow me to examine your scar on the back? Hadrian mentioned it's causing you pain. Sometimes, and your father told me that they had to remove something from it. Did he told you about it? Severus nodded hesitant. He mentioned there was something dark in me, but it's gone. He didn't tell me what it was exactly, though, whispered the boy, hands kneading his robe. Nervously, it was something truly dark, and unfortunately, even it's removed, the dark magic itself isn't gone yet. It takes a long time to dissolve completely, if ever, but your father did his best to keep it in check. I'd like to see it for myself, making sure it won't causing you more harm. I also brought something with me, which should help with the pain. Severus took a glance at Hadrian, who sat on his bed with a sleepy Juna in his lap. Please, Severus, I hate to see you in pain, and father might be able to help. I can tell that the pain gets worse with each passing week. Please, I'm truly worried about you. After a minute staring at each other, Severus finally started to remove his robe and tunic. When the boy turned and moved his hair away, revealing his nude back, Alucard flinched. Like Hadrian, he'd see and even feel the black magic still embedded in it. However, what let him worry was the fact that his son was also right when he wrote that the scars seemed to get more pronounced with each passing week, which means that the black magic gets stronger, which increases the pain it's causing already. The scar was still pale for untrained eyes, but Alucard saw the light red spots. It might be still weeks or even months until one of the other boys may notice, but regardless, it was important to stop whatever happens. Alucard might not be able to remove the black magic, which was also radiating from the boy's left arm, where the dark mark had been, but he can stop it from becoming stronger. Alucard was also examining the two parallel lines, but without touching them, very sure that these spots marked the places Severus' wings lay under, and therefore would be very sensitive. Okay. I'll put some salve on your scars, which should help with keeping them as they are and not turn as being infected. However, there is more black magic as I anticipated, and to stop it I need to put some runes around your scars. It won't hurt, I promise, reassured Alucard quickly when Severus tensed. It might be a little uncomfortable though, I won't lie. Still, the black magic isn't as strong yet, therefore it won't hurt when I use my runes to keep it in check. However, we'll have to keep an eye on it. Should the runes not work for whatever reason, we need to use something more stronger. Severus was still tense, but nodded regardless. Alucard cursed inwardly. Should he ever get his hands on this so-called Dark Lord, he will rip him apart, even if Severus had been a wizard at the time and not falling under the peace treaty. But that wasn't the case any longer, and for the dark magic hurting the most sacred creature was reason enough to kill the bastard. It's just too bad Lady Magic couldn't get rid of the dark magic as well. But by removing it, it'd have killed the boy even before he was reborn. From what Daenerys had told Alucard, Severus was already more dead as alive when Lady Magic transformed him. And magic, light or dark, makes no difference for her. The difference comes from her children creating and using the spells, potions, or whatever. And even if maybe created for a good-minded reason, if the Wixen performs the magic with the will of inflicting harm, then the magic can be considered dark, and it can linger for decades depending on how long or strong the object or person was infected by it. Okay, Severus, lay down and just try to relax. Severus went over to his bed and laid down on his stomach, facing Hadrian, who gave him an encouraging smile. I'll start with the salve. It'll be a little cold, warned Alucard, pulling out his pouch with his supplies and sitting down on Severus' other side. Then he carefully rubbed the salve over the scar. Severus startled a little, despite the warning, but relaxed quickly when the slight pain subsided and closed his eyes. Hadrian gritted his teeth, just now realizing that Severus seemed to have been in pain all the time. Alucard's eyes flashed bright red for a moment, realizing the same. However, both smiled at seeing Norbert climbing on Severus' head and hissing at Alucard fearlessly. The little dragon didn't like his mother in discomfort and wanted to see what was happening. Alucard almost laughed when he noticed the silver-blue bat also staring at him out of his hiding spot under the boy's hair. Hush, little ones. Your mother and guardian is safe, I promise. Cooed Alucard, but it was the gentle pet on their little heads from Severus that stopped Norbert hissing and the light squeaks from Dante, though they watched extremely closely what the living vampire was doing, ready to defend parent/guardian should the need arise. Putting the bowl with salve aside, Alucard went to the next step. Okay, Severus, next will be the runes. As I said, it might be a little uncomfortable, but it shouldn't cause any pain. Should it be the case, let me know immediately, and I'll stop. Alucard waited for Severus' confirmation, and when he heard the low okay, he began a low chant while letting his own wand running over the back, the tip just slightly touching the skin and lighting it up wherever it run over the white skin for a few seconds. Severus indeed felt something like a slight heat, but as Alucard promised, it wasn't painful. He had tensed up again at first, but after a few minutes, it was becoming even relaxing, so much that Severus fell asleep not long after Alucard begun. Dante and Norbert kept watching, but less alert when Severus relaxed completely. As Alucard was done with putting the runes around the big scar, he did the same on the left arm with a much smaller scar. The whole process took him 2 hours, in which Juna also woke up from her nap, but stayed silent after Hadrian explained what their father was doing and that she needed to be quiet if not wanting to disturb Alucard's effort to help Severus. When finally the process was done, Alucard gave another short examination before covering Severus with his thick blanket. He'll sleep until tomorrow. I'm glad that I decided to come, because I'd put a stop from the increasing of the black magic. Keep a close eye on it, Hadrian. Do you think it has something to do with the data professor? Should I keep Severus away from him? Could be. Daenerys told me that Severus was in pain whenever he got close to one of the prisoners with the dark mark. He might no longer have it himself, but the magic still embedded in it seems to react when in close proxy to someone else with the same magical signature, either marked with it or the caster themselves. Which means Quirrell is a Death Eater. Either that or he possesses something from the Dark Lord, which has his magical signature. I see. I'll have an eye on him. He gives me the creeps anyway, and I'm glad every time class is over and I can take Severus away. Do you think he could have something to do with the killing of the unicorns in the Forbidden Forest? You said a Centaur warned you that's the Dark Lord doings, which means the chance of Quirrell helping him is very high, especially with everything considered. I'm wondering, shouldn't Hogwarts have wards against dark magic, or at least alarm the headmaster of someone or something entering the castle with dark magic? I assume there should be some standard ward should someone active using dark magic. I'm not sure if they can detect dark artifacts if they're dormant. Even the black magic in Severus is not really active, not as it would be when there would be still an active bond to the caster, even if it seemed to be the opposite. That's not reassuring. I know, But it'd be otherwise, then the headmaster would know about the black magic in Severus, which he doesn't. Are you certain? Yes. He didn't show any signs of knowing. Otherwise, I'm sure he'd have called Severus or just declined him as student as soon as he arrived. I'll trust your judgment in it. I don't know what to think about the headmaster. His favorites are clearly the Gryffindors, which might be an advantage, but it doesn't befit his position as headmaster. It shows also his lack of reprimand the professors, which were former Gryffindors. You mean your parents? Yeah, he didn't much say anything or showed little concern when I mentioned what happened in your class. But enough for today. I have another meeting soon. I'll leave you the salve and send you more. You saw how I did it. Keep repeating it every second day and twice on the day when you have data. Once in the morning and then before you go to bed. Understood. Don't worry too much, Hadrian. Severus is stronger as he looks, and from what I could see today, you both have found some good friends. The Malfoy boy takes his task as Severus. Protector, very serious as well. He may keep his distance, but is in high alert and never too far away. That's true. Still, I won't forget what the Centaur said about Lady Magic taking Severus away when we deem ourselves unworthy or not able to protect him. Then let us make sure to disappoint neither of them. Unfortunately, we can't just simply kill everyone who might just look the wrong way at Severus. Neither can we ask Lady Magic of the future trials awaiting us. We can only give our best and hope it's enough. For that, I'll also send someone to the Centaurs and in search for the Dark Lord, while also gathering every information we can get about your data professor. Meanwhile, you concentrate on your studies and your mate. You both are children and deserve to be just that. Severus' first childhood wasn't very pleasant, and he grew up much too fast, so help him to just be that, a happy child. There will be no other chance for him. Of course, Father. We'll see us tomorrow. We're waiting for you at the entrance leading to the Quidditch field after breakfast. Come, Juna. You deserve a reward for being silent the entire time you woke up from your nap. The little girl beamed at the praise and winked her brother a goodbye. When they were gone, Hadrian placed himself next to Severus on the bed and just observed him, thinking about what his father had said. When the others returned, Hadrian was already asleep as well, cuddled around Severus' smaller form.